It is lonely at the top. Championship Sunday is usually just two teams, and it's those who have battled through the brawn and the hard-tested moments to get there and decide that they are fighting for glory. Well, in Apex Legends, it's a little different. We've got 20 teams who will be playing in our regional final, and today, the last day of EMEA, will decide which teams will be in that top 20 and which teams will be watching from the sidelines. Of course, this is EMEA, North America, coming up later in the afternoon, and it is a great day of Apex Legends esports to set up our finale coming up on Sunday, and I cannot wait to share it all with you all day long. My name is Rain Day, and everyone in the chat, everyone who is following along, watching, tweeting at us, we appreciate you. We love you, Apex community, and we're ready to get it on. Of course, I got to bring in two of the best in the business, my two close friends and great casters and commentators, Mark Hatcher on set, and of course, Dan Gaskin. Mark, Dan, it's great to be with you here today. And Mark, just an incredible day of Apex that we have ready to unfold.
I am ready, my friend. I am so ready for this. I've been waiting to get back on the mic for quite some time, and what a time to do it, right? We've got our final official match day of Pro League before we head to the regional finals. We are going to experience some heartbreak today. We are going to see teams kind of ascend to a level that we haven't seen before, and they need to. Plus, we've, of course, got to keep in mind that battle for relegation. So this is going to be an amazing day of action for both EMEA and North America. But here in EMEA, this is where we get started.
I'm really excited, Rain Day. We have one of the best World's Edge performing teams in the region. We have one of the best Storm Point teams performing in the region, and they're both going to clash. There's so many points that are going to be up for grabs as well. These teams wanting to get to those regionals, wanting to have that LAN place. Like, this is going to be one of the sweatiest weeks that we see of play, and I can't wait for it.
Speaking of sweat, you know, some of the teams that are going to be sweating the most are the ones who aren't playing and who are watching B and C finish off their games today, hoping they don't take one of the 20 spots that they might be occupying away from them. So let's look at the participants that we've got on display today. Mark, walk me through these teams, because we've got some big names and we've got some names who need a miracle performance.
Yeah, I mean, this lobby is going to be carnage because, like you mentioned, there's teams who are desperate for points to get to regional finals. There's teams who are desperate for points to stay in Pro League and not have to go through the relegation fight. But there's also teams who are desperate for points at the top, right? We have our #1 team in Pro League, not in this lobby. That opens things up for the likes of Aurora, Fire Beavers, Alliance, all in this lobby to make a run and see if they can take that first place ahead of the regional finals.
Dan, when it comes down to the overall picture of EMEA, the regular standings help give a clear indication of who needs to perform today and who cannot afford to stay even. They've got to make a move.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams in the kind of bubble area fighting to try and secure that kind of top 9 spot, or at least get it within the top 9 as you head into regionals. Because, of course, when you are in regionals, you can still get points towards your qualification for LAN. But I think what's really exciting is the fact that when we do get to those regional finals, we still have one team that could win it all on that day via match point and would still qualify for LAN. So even those who are down in kind of 20th position, just trying to scrape into those regional finals, they still have a shot of getting to LAN just purely off having one of those big days. And looking at this region and how close it's been, I'd say there are teams who really could disrupt that top 9, really could disrupt those big teams, and that's what makes this region so amazing to watch.
Look at that, 57, 56, 56, 56, 55. It is so close. It's not even funny, but look at the bottom teams as well. Not as sincere. Bitfix Gaming, Corpa, Phoenix Legacy, Heroes, Turkish Stars, Scars, and Echo Esports. The reason I bring these teams up is because right now they are sitting in relegation. Echo may not have enough to get it out of that situation today. So some teams already have their fate sealed. Some other teams have a chance. With a performance today, they can guarantee their spot in Pro League for the next split, which, as we all know, is a huge opportunity in and of itself. Who will rise to the occasion? Who will be sat there on the sidelines watching these other teams go to our regional land? We will find out. But of course, gentlemen, we have a lot of teams we could focus on. We could probably focus on every single one of these teams. But Mark, there's always one team we come into it with that we have our eye on. Who's yours?
I am going with VZN. Now, usually I curse people, but these guys have been playing so well, I think that they're completely immune to it. From a two-man team to a winning machine, it seems like recently. The addition of Nags has been a highlight to the team's rise to success, but this man on your screen here, Zane, he has been putting up a huge amount of kills for this team in recent weeks. Speaking of recent weeks, the last time that we saw these guys on our screen, they took home first place in the lobby. They had a good amount of KP to go alongside it as well, so a good mix mix of playstyle, but they also have to be aware of this lobby. They are holding down 8th position at the moment, just inside those LAN qualification places after regional finals. They could be one of those weeks where it's a little bit nervy for them, but they'll have to find out and see. Dan, who have you got, my friend?
Well, I spoke about one of the teams that are best performing on World's Edge, and that is Invictus Gaming. Throughout this region, they have dominated World's Edge. Their consistency has been incredible, and of course, the addition of Graceful has really changed the kind of outlook of this team. Graceful used to be an IGL, now is co-IGLing alongside Noises. The way they play this game, the placement-heavy style they have, is really shown what consistency can do for a squad. Yes, okay, they might not get as many kills per game, but they are always up there. They're getting into top 10s, they're getting into top 5s, and as I said, on World's Edge, one of the best win rates on this map as well. I genuinely believe that this team has what it takes to be a contender, not just for this region, but when we're talking about the finals, when we're talking about championships. It is a well-built squad, and they are a team to look out for right now.
Well, looking and talking about championships, here's a team who was at the 22 championships, but they've changed. Nags, you mentioned, went to VZN, and they're doing quite well, Mark, but Element 6 trying to refine their own momentum, and they did it with Lifen early on in the season. Then they hit their slump. Now they are desperately in need of more points, tied at 10th with 2 other teams, and one team, Nightmare Esports, 1 point behind, looking to secure a spot at another LAN to prove they made the right decision in the offseason. But Game Ward, really not much to prove from them. L'Équipe de France, the former roster, picked up by Game Ward earlier this year. I love this team. You know why? They team fight so well, and that's always been what they've brought to the table. Psychop, aimbot, living true to the name. In this final moment, hitting shots like that with the car from that distance, Game Ward have shown that they are ready to take 2v1s, 1v1s with ease. But another team to pay attention to that is tied with them as well. All 3 of these teams, like I mentioned, tied in points coming into today. V2, Izadin, Nubicide, and Joke, formerly of L'Équipe de France, playing against and with many of those members from the teams previously mentioned. Can he put this team on his shoulders and push V2 into the top spot to be able to qualify, make a chance at regional finals, and maybe even secure their place in LAN? All of those questions coming up today. And also, if you are worried that we just gave you too many storylines, which is honest, you could be honest, that's a lot. We got multi-views, so you can watch them all. You don't have to listen to just the main broadcast. You could cover Element 6, you can cover VZN, you can watch Game Ward on your own. See their rotations, their team compositions, their style of play, their style of fight. Are they from the edge and like to kind of aggress on the teams there? Or do they sit in the zone and have great communication? All of that available to up-level your ALGS Year 3 experience. Check out Multiview by clicking into the command center, and we'll be able to give you that great experience. Now, of course, every single day when we start these broadcasts, we know we have a lot of viewers who are coming in and checking things out, and maybe some who need to be reminded of some of the tenets and things you are going to most likely see throughout today's broadcast. And that's why we enjoy this segment called What's in Your Pack, presented by WD Black. Today, gentlemen, we have a weapon that has been, tale as old as time since Season 3, has been the bane of Mini's existence, but has been a crucial part of the basically flow of Apex Legends. Mark, of course, I'm talking about the charge rifle.
Yeah, the charge rifle is such a great utility weapon. It doesn't matter if you play edge or if you play center zone. It's so good for commanding space. If you're in the center zone and you're putting some shots down, fantastic. You're gonna be able to hold teams out, make it so difficult for them to rotate in. If you're playing edge, you can pick off third-party fights so easily with this charge rifle in your hands. And the thing I always love about it is it's a pick up and go weapon, right? As long as you can find a scope, a 3 times, a 2 to 4, or 4 to 8, whatever it might be, you only need the stock. No mag needed. You just pick up the ammo, you get going, you can get those speedy rotations going.
And you also need someone prepared to play it on your team as well. You sacrifice a little bit of short range and mid range fights, you've only got the secondary weapon to rely on, and you need someone who can be in those positions, Raindane. That's what we saw from Zane, always finding those correct angles so he can hold teams out or push teams with his squad. It's amazing to watch when someone uses the weapon correctly.
Whether you find yourself getting shot with it or using it to shoot others and level up those Evo shields, or at least establish presence in the map, the charge rifle plays a huge part of the Apex Legends high-level meta, and you will see it quite a lot today. That was What's in Your Pack, presented by WD Black. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for kind of joining us here on this journey. It's been 8 days so far that we've found ourselves looking at who will qualify to get here. So it's very, very exciting. And another element that plays a big difference that we've seen, and even myself having a chance to spend time yesterday with the coach of Team Liquid, #1 team in North America, Hansik, teams have different map play styles, and they do well, and they maybe don't do so well on certain other maps. That's why there is drama to this. Certain World's Edge teams will have a chance to get off out of the gates and running, and can they run far enough before the Storm Point teams maybe a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit more comfortable in the open spaces, maybe a little bit more Bangalore that we'll end up seeing? Will they end up having more success at the back half and crescendoing to take the spots away from the teams who start out well? Now Mark, I think this is obviously a great question, but I kind of want to go back to when B versus C met. It was Aurora who stood at the top of that mountain.
It certainly was, and they put up one of the biggest monster games that we've seen in all of the ALGS. I think it was 21 kills or something they had, along with the first place finish. It was absolutely ridiculous, and that was on Storm Point. And I think the fact that we have the little switch around of what maps we start on and then what map we move on to is so interesting and a story in itself, right? Because the comfort pick for so many teams is World's Edge. They've played so many games of it. They know their rotations. They know how they're going to try and approach things if they don't get a beacon on spawn, for example, how their rotation is going to adjust. But when we get to Storm Point, there's still that little bit of a kind of unknown for some teams. But I feel like a team like Aurora, I mentioned Beacon, they don't care about the Beacon. They are not worried about the Beacon. They just want to fight their way into zone. And the way they use Catalyst, I think the addition of this legend has been so good for them to be able to isolate those fights endgame, to cut off the line of sight of all of those teams who are inside a zone, bunkered up. They can isolate a fight in all of that carnage. And when you're Aurora and you've got that mechanical skill, you cause problems. 72 points, first place. They were phenomenal, and I'm sure they'll be looking to do something extremely similar today.
You know, Dan, I want to get your thoughts on Catalyst as well. This is a legend that we've seen Aurora really pioneer. They have, with Maliwan kind of taking the reins on that, said this is a legend we think can be and should be in the meta at the highest level, and they've been proving it.
Yeah, I think with the amount of kind of vision you can ruin for other teams, they kind of ruin their line of sight. You can isolate fights as well with it. The fact it blocks the Bloodhound scan, the fact that Seer can't really do much through it either, just means that you are going to be seeing teams in those final circles being an absolute nuisance to not just one team in particular, but everyone around them. I've seen final circles that are absolute mayhem, like cluttered completely just because of Catalyst as well. But I will say it's getting there is the biggest issue for me. We are seeing some teams find that consistency and are finding their way to the final circle, but also seeing teams just hold out squads that are trying to push them with Catalyst, just bunkering down in a building, getting Watson ready, just making sure those fences are up to protect you, and then holding out for Catalyst for as long as possible, and then a third party comes in as well. So it's really, for me, about can you find a way to utilize Catalyst alongside other legends so you can get to those final circles, and then that's when she's at her best.
Gentlemen, there's a lot of teams that we're obviously talking about because they're bubble teams, but there's still teams in this lobby that could have a huge impact. You look at Vex. I mean, this is a team that's maybe on the top of their game, playing better than they have, Mark. They're in this lobby. They could play spoiler to a lot of these teams who need points because they just end up running into Vex on the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we haven't even talked about Vex, right? Vex are always hunting on the edge of zone. It's interesting to see because there's been a little bit of a transition when they've been scrimming. They've been trying to play a little bit more zone heavy. They've been trying to see if they can work that play style as well, and they have been pretty successful in it. But it's just finding the balance right. On Storm Point, I think they should just play their natural game where they're trying to take those fights in and around edge. But on World's Edge, I like the idea that they're trying to adjust a little bit, try and play a little bit more zone orientated and look for wins because, as we know, regional finals and LAN, match point is a factor.
Well, it's time to try to get there. Nothing is safe. Nothing is secure. It's time to get going and show up for your spot of the top 20 in the ALGS of EMEA. And guess what? We've got none other than Mark Onset and Dan Gaskin to take us through. Fellas, I'm so excited for this moment. This is really what I think is going to be just the sign of the knockout stages are here. We bring it from the World Cup, which is happening all around the world, right? You notice there's a difference between playing those first three group games. Now, Dan, it is a totally different dynamic. You have to perform. The tension is there. You don't connect all of your passes. You don't hit all of your shots, but you have to bring in the energy that a knockout stage requires.
I don't know. Is this me, or does this feel like a subtle dig coming on in here? Like you don't hit all your shots.
If your country doesn't perform when it matters most, then you're out.
I'd like to try and use my dual nationality here to say like, oh, well, at least I'm American because, oh, no, wait, you guys got eliminated earlier, didn't you? So it's fine. But I will agree with your football analogies. A very important day. You've got to hit your shots, hit your goals, whatever. We saw last time these two teams competed against each other how important those victories are. You saw teams like Nightmare, like Gamewood, who maybe aren't your big hitters in EMEA region, but find themselves still in contention for regional, still in contentions for LAN because they found victories on those days, because they found those big point games where maybe some of those bigger teams were playing a little bit slower, were just trying to kind of feel out the lobby. They really took the game by the scruff of the neck. They really said, well, you know what, if these teams aren't going to actually be pushing and looking for kills, we can actually find some success here by maybe being a little bit more aggressive, by maybe trying to surprise them. And I think we might see that more here today, where teams are desperate to try and get some points. Those who are, fighting against relegation, fighting to get into regionals, they're going to be the ones that might surprise us here.
I've seen it happen multiple times where teams that are in the lead and that feel, we're 8 points in the lead. So, we're okay. We don't have to be too aggressive. They get taken out on a random rotation. They take a bad fight. Now they're 2v3, 2v1. I mean, you look at Space Station Gaming, the last time North America played, Dropped had to have this solo run of a solo rat trying to hold it off in some of these previous tournaments that we've seen, and ended up doing it. But you don't want to be comfortable at all in this situation, Mark. You definitely want to make sure that you feel that your back is against the wall, even in game 6, even if you're in a lead, because anything can happen like that. And we might be able to bring up some of the standings too to show you how close it is. As you explained, just you can't let your foot off the gas.
No, I think go back to my pick to watch today, right? VZN. It's such an interesting position to be in at this stage of the year, right? In this stage of the cycle of Pro League, especially with regional finals coming up, and of course the LAN event after that. They're in 8th position. You think, you're going to be ecstatic. If they finish here in the regional finals, then they will be qualifying for LAN. That's what everybody wants to do, right? But if you're VZN, are you looking up or are you looking down the leaderboard at the moment? Because you know that there are teams chasing you. You know that E6 are behind you, Game World are behind you, you know that V2 are behind you, and they're all playing in this lobby. So one game where, like you say, you get caught in a bad rotation, maybe you get gate kept and you can't win that 3v3 engagement. You can come out of that game with 1 or 2 points, and you see Gamewood at the top of the leaderboards afterwards, you are starting to panic, which is why I think all of a sudden this becomes such a mental game today for these teams. I don't think it's just about hitting the shots. I don't think it's just about making the right plays. It's being able to bounce back from good games. It's being, from bad games, and also being able to stay on a level head when you have a good game as well. Have to take fight by fight, game by game, and step by step today if you want to be in those strong positions going into the regional finals.
Dan, look at this too. I want you to react to Foot Esports, because they're a team that is very, very close to not even making it into this grand final, but they're a legacy team in Apex Legends. They've been around since the Virtus Pro days, and it would be a surprise to see them obviously not have success here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that me and Mark were discussing is they just lack that kind of killer instinct a little bit. They're a team that they're not all guns blazing like maybe they used to be. I think there was that threat about them that they could have, kind of pummeled you into the ground with each team fight, and they'd be able to find their way through the map just by taking fight after fight. But they seem to lack that a little bit for me personally when they are getting in those engagements. There's no one that's really making those calls bravely enough so that they will take the right risks at the right time. But that being said, they're still there or thereabouts. They still have the chance of getting to regionals. It's not like it's all doom and gloom. And as we saw last time these two groups went up against each other, we saw some surprises with those who are going to be at the top. So I do think we are going to see someone kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck. Like I said, we are going to see a different team pop up that is maybe outside of the norm. And who knows, maybe it could be Foot Esports.
Not as Vincier. We had talked a little bit about a story of a player from Not as Vincier, Mark. I don't know if you want to throw that out there or just speak a little bit about the team, because they are currently in relegation and they need to perform today. It's their last chance to almost secure some type of Pro League finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw this on Twitter. Sanya's actually playing from a hospital at the moment from back home because of the fact that it's got the best chance of having power for the entirety of the competition today. So we talk about LAN, we talk about regional finals, right? But there's always these bigger stories, and I want to give a huge shout out and all the support I can to everybody who's going through these really tough situations, and it just shows how much the guy wants it, right? I mean, to put yourself out there, put yourself in these positions, and still want to compete. I mean, I'm kind of rooting for Na'Vi today. We're going to say a little bit unbiased here, but I'm sorry, everyone. Like, it's you got to support people who are going through it at the moment. And Na'Vi also in a position where if they do have a good day today, then they will go into the regional finals. They will avoid that relegation scrap. And I think that for peace of mind is going to be huge for them. And we've also seen like Na'Vi, they're kind of a bit up and down, but match point format, when you get to regional finals, if you're in that lobby, there's always a chance. I mean, it's an opportunity, right? And if they can do this, then maybe today could be a day where they'll be smiling at the end of it.
What I will say off the back of that, sorry, Randy, is just that Na'Vi, one of the only teams alongside Totem who haven't got a victory yet this season. So they really need to knuckle down today, and we need to see something different.
Well, will we see that Cinderella story, maybe even getting a chance at LAN if they win the regional final? Still a lot of work to do for Na'Vi and every other team here, as yes, it is now time. Thank you so much for letting us set this up for you. The stories are here, but it's time to see who writes their own script to the finals. Let's send it over for game one here with Mark and Dan.
All right then, everybody. Welcome. It's time to get to the point that we've all been waiting for, and that is, of course, a little bit of action, right? And I can already hear some action going down, Dan. Lava Siphon is a hot place to land, not just because of the lava, but because of the 3v3s, and it's Corpa who seems to be coming out on top of this one.
Corpa have really been struggling this season, and maybe could be cannon fodder here. A team's looking to try and take advantage of that, or maybe Corpa just don't really have a drop spot they're comfortable for, but it is going to be a catalyst. Corpa are going to win the fight, and Nightmare Esports get eliminated on set, which is a absolute awful start for them to begin the day, because Nightmare were one of those teams on the bubble we thought maybe they're the party poopers today. These are one of the teams that could ruin everything.
Yeah, I mean, what a start to the day, right? We've got a 3v3 kicking off, a Lava Siphon, and I tell you what, it's a good 3v3 to win as well, as we see the circle information on our screens. Not only are Corp going to be able to get the beacon as well, which is going to give them a little bit more information. They've got KP, they've got good shields, they're leveled up already. And they've got to be a little bit wary of IG, who do land just to the northern side of where they are, sort of sharing a few buildings of Lava Siphon, but also up on those hill houses as well. So what a start it is. But speaking of circle, Dan, you can see Lava Siphon could be one of those places we could go here.
Yeah, I think when we get a view of the map, you are going to see a lot of teams who are landing around Lava Siphon who are going to be very comfortable. You mentioned about the beacon information as well. Corpa have it, Foot Esports have it. We are going to see Aurora have it as well over towards Harvester. So those three teams are going to have that instant rotation information where they can move early, they can set up, or if they are a team who likes to be a little bit more aggressive, likes to be edge, they can start to spread themselves out a little bit, go towards the edge of that circle and try and pick up some kills as they gatekeep a few squads. For other teams who are going to have to move a little bit further, the likes of Element 6, they're going to have to move quite a long way across the whole of the map, as well as V2, but both of them should have had beacon information as well, so they'll have the option to move a little bit sooner. But I do think, Mark, when you get a circle like this, where you do have to travel so far, as soon as you get that beacon information, you have to make a decision there and then. Are you going to move and try and match the speed of those who are landing close to the circle, or are you going to play edge? Are you going to play for kills? And it's got to be a decision made there and then when it happens.
It looks like a lot of teams are currently making their rotation. Reply Totem are actually going towards Dome at the moment to get some beacon information themselves. Didn't have that info over at launch site, so they're taking a little bit of a way out to make sure that they can set up for where that zone is going to be going. But I mean, Corpa, if you were on the other side of that Nightmare Esports, I'd mentioned how it could be a mental game today. Speaking of which, we'll just wait for this as they're taking a few shots. The Dark Veil will go down just to deny that line of sight and allow them to retreat. But the mental game, right? Going down early, game number one, you think you're going to be safe. You get contested off drop. That is the biggest test of your mental strength I think you possibly asked for in the first few moments of the action today.
Yeah, and I think when you're a team like Corpa and you're in 25th, right, you're just trying to avoid relegation this week, and you're not even necessarily thinking, oh, okay, we want to push ourselves into regionals, even though it's still possible. Your first thought process has to be avoiding relegation, and that is going to make you play in a way sometimes people will be quite scared. People will be hoping that no one drops on them, that they could play slow, that they could just play zone. Well, when you get a 3v3 fight straight away, that's great for a confidence builder.
Well, speaking of the map overhead, here it is. You can also see the point of views of IG and V2 on the left-hand side. And you're seeing a lot of teams kind of heading towards Lava Siphon, maybe holding a few chokes. And to me, it looks like teams aren't 100% convinced of where this one might be ending. You can see start a fight there also inside of Lava Siphon alongside Aurora, and Aurora right in the center of zone at the moment, Dan, which is something we're not too used to them seeing, but it hasn't been too much of a rotation for them to make, so not too surprising to see them make that early move.
I think a team to watch out for here is Invictus Gaming, one of the best performing World's Edge teams in terms of their rotations and where the zone actually finishes with their predictions. They've moved over to kind of Big Mortar area from Lava Siphon. They dropped very close towards that scrap we saw right at the start of the game, and they could have pushed it. They could have tried to third party it, but they moved very quickly to their current position you see there on the map. So that suggests to me IG think the circle is going to be heading over towards Big Mord. They want to get their defensive legends and they want to put them in the right place at the right time.
Well, we got a little bit more of a fight going down, and it is Aurora. I mentioned Aurora love to fight. They do not want your beacons. They just want your death boxes. And even though the Phoenix kit is going to have to be popped here by Maliwan, they've already forced their way into Lava Siphon, and it's Start a Fight Esports. I think you were on the other side of this one.
Yeah, and Aurora, one of the best performing teams in terms of consistency with points scored as well. A lot of that does come from kills, even though they naturally lead to placements. But they are definitely a team you want to be running away from. And right now, Corpa are running with their tails between their legs.
They are. I stand corrected. It's Corpa. It's Starfight Esports who are in the vicinity, though. So even though they pick up that 1 KP, they can't finish off the entire squad. Once again, the Dark Veil being used just to provide some sort of escape mechanism for Aurora's. Ranchi is going to be playing the Wraith and trying to do what he can to maybe get in and finish off a few more of those kills. But Corpa now, after such a strong start, winning that 3v3 fight, well, all of a sudden it's their mental game being tested here. They're down to just 2.
Yeah, but they do have the banner, so you can get back up to a 3, and we do see teams finding a level of consistency when it comes to getting those beacons and actually making sure you can get back to a 3. But how healthy are you truly going to be? Are you going to be well looted when you get to the ground? That's always going to be the biggest question for me. And are you going to bring unnecessary attention towards a team that is just going to be like Aurora, pushing at you because they want to get those kills on the board? I will say the current position Aurora in, they're fine right now. But I think they will know that eventually they're probably going to have to transition a little bit further east on the map. But at the moment, they're just going to be kind of scouting out. They've got the ability to hold certain areas thanks to the caustic as well. This is a very interesting composition because it allows both aggression in some states, but also defensive abilities in others.
Yeah, kind of like the addition of Wraith again. The little micro rotations that can be made with that portal towards endgame is something we've seen teams kind of get stuffed on a little bit. They haven't been able to make those smaller rotations with the Valkyries moving in late and landing third parties and dropping sometimes out of bounds onto teams to cause them some problems. But just to give a little bit of a highlight to Aurora's game plan today, they currently sat in 2nd place on 94 points, Ascend in 1st on 106. This is the overall standings, of course. But Ascend not in this lobby today, so Aurora with a chance to make it towards the top, as are the team on your screen right now, Alliance.
And we've not got the chance to speak about Alliance today, but they were the team I was alluding to, one of the best Stormpoint performing teams throughout this season. They have been a little bit lackluster on World's Edge at times, which seems crazy when you look at this Alliance roster. You expect them to have that consistency on World's Edge, but they've not really been able to find the victories. They've had top 3s here or there. They're getting top 10 enough times to at least get good points totals, but it hasn't been something that's kind of blown me away, considering where they lie in the overall standings, right? This Alliance roster is 100% going to be playing at regionals. They are very likely going to be playing at LAN. All they need is just kind of average placements throughout these next couple of weeks.
We'll have to see what Alliance's game plan is here. You can see that Yuki, Hackis, and Effect, 2 purples and a blue to go alongside it. And the interesting little change in recent times for me has been Hackis, the IGL, moving on to Newcastle. You have Effect, the controller player, on Horizon. No surprise to see that. You want him to be fragging out and being as aggressive as he can be. But I love the way that Alliance actually used Newcastle. Sometimes they use it in very aggressive ways to kind of siege buildings. But for now, they're just going to be sieging from height with a couple of shots coming in from that R301.
And then we get some more information on where that circle's moving towards. Again, it is going to be going southeast, where people were predicting when they had that beacon information, they would have had that knowledge. That's why we were seeing so many people heavily rotating down towards Big Mord and Lava City. But about now is when we're going to see teams getting more beacon information and getting more kind of strategy as to where they want to be moving with this next circle.
I was going to say, it's Vexed actually who are getting a lot of problems early on in this lobby. It was 2 teams shooting at them. You saw Alliance get that first knock. I think it was Yuki with the charge rifle who managed to pick that one up. And then you also saw Start a Fight having a look at it and managed to get a second knock. So Vex, we mentioned how dangerous the team they can be in this lobby. Well, they've only got 1 player alive now. 19 squads remaining, but already we have some partial teams and Alliance. So outside of zone for now, but in a great position to cut off anyone making a bad rotation here.
And we've seen a few teams move from kind of Big Mord back towards the northern side of Lava Siphon as well, which to me suggests they've probably got that kind of zone 4 beacon information, zone 3 beacon information, excuse me, which will allow them to move once more across so that they don't get hit too heavily when we do see a shift in circles a little bit later. But teams naturally being forced together now. We are going to see a few more fights. A lot of teams kind of just puffing up their chest a little bit to say, no, this is our area. We're going to be holding it. You need to find somewhere else to reside for now.
I think Alliance's plan here is to try and just clean out all of the southern side, excuse me, of the zone, and then try and make a move off the back of that. You can see Hackett's going to be calling out this Valkyrie ult. They want to be aggressive on it as well and try and push up into zone and see if they can cut those teams off, because the last thing you want to do, even if you're doing damage, is find yourself with a few seconds left to move into zone, and all of those teams, even though they're weak, turn around and look at you. Hackett's going to be swinging on this player. That will be Vexed eliminated. Matafe the last to fall as Alliance now make their move forward.
And that's huge, really. Everyone else in the lobby will be loving to see that. Vexed, one of the highest performing teams that we have in Groups B versus C, and they really have threatened this entire lobby the last 2 times they've matched up against each other. So with early eliminations like that, getting rid of one of your more aggressive teams, it allows those who are playing placements to be maybe a little bit safer.
There's that mobile shield coming out to give Hackett a few seconds to maybe pop that battery, but you can also see the Q from Maggie coming through as well, just to shred through that and cause some more problems. That means Aurora is in the area, and they're looking to wrap behind and cause some problems, but also Corpa, as a 2-man, 3-man now, excuse me, managed to get that player back up, are also rotating behind Alliance here. So a few teams in the vicinity, they have to be extremely careful on where they focus their fire.
Yeah, you were saying how Alliance were just trying to hold out this kind of southwest side of the zone. They won't be aware of Corpa. Corpa can very much spoil everything here for this entire game plan from Alliance. So someone's got to be on the swivel, head on a swivel, make sure you're checking behind you just in case, knowing full well there could be someone coming through the zone. But it depends whether Corpa want to even try and challenge this. Corpa likely, because they are so low on health, will probably just try and rat out for a little bit, stay alive before planning their movement, hoping they don't get seen, but there's the charge rifle beam.
And the problem is here, they haven't been able to heal up enough as well. You can see that Alliance doing a lot of work in this lobby at the moment. Fire Beavers have just lost 9 impulse. And it was Effect from Alliance who managed to do that himself. A couple of meds going to be shared here, but Corp are going to be able to get one player back on their feet. The med kit being popped as well. You have to wonder here, are they going to look to Valkyrie, or are they going to be able to get healthy enough to hit a Valkyrie, or is it going to be a case of them rotating all the way through Lava City and having a treacherous path back in towards this zone? But Alliance have done a great job down, and it's been mainly down to the use of this charge rifle coming in from Yuki.
Well, we saw, you know, the what's in your pack presented by WD Black earlier, and how important the charge rifle can affect your game if you've got it in the right hands, but it has just allowed them to create so much space and to force so many teams away from them so they can dominate the southern side of this circle. As we go back to Aurora, one of our more aggressive teams at times have been holding down Lava Siphon absolutely perfectly at the moment. The use of the caustic has been great.
Been great. Good shots coming in from Malawan as well. However, shots being exchanged and Horizon will be eliminated. Also in the kill feed, you might have mentioned that E6 were eliminated. One of those bubble teams that Rainday was talking about before the action got underway today. So Aurora continuing to win those team fights once again. We're down to 16 squads, and you're quite right. That map overhead shows us in the top left-hand side of your screen that we have shifted back towards Lava Siphon more than we were towards Big Mord. So Big Mord is out of the question now for an end zone. It's all going to be about what's happening outside of Lava Siphon.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see some of the teams that moved across towards Big Mord and then quickly shifted back once they had that beacon info, and they wanted to avoid the kind of dangerous zone 4 shift that really punishes some teams for going a little bit too heavy on their zone prediction. And it's why, as of late, we're starting to see teams who will go kind of in the middle. They'll go for zone areas that are going to be maybe a little less risky, that can allow you to transition from one side of the map to the other a little bit more freely, and where you're not going to be punished as much.
Well, Corpa have decided that they want to try and maybe land and take a 3v3 with this team, but they're landing in not a safe position whatsoever at the moment. They do have the RE45 though, and if you can hit a couple of shots, all of a sudden a bad position can become a good one. They cut off the line of sight, they hold down this truck, but now an EMP coming in. There's Watson fences everywhere, and Corpa at the moment look like they're in a very, very tough spot. Yeah,
because on the other side of Corpa is going to be Scars, who were in Big Mord. They're going to be joining that fight. There's like 4 or 5 teams over there that are going to be scrapping, but Alliance still dominating this side of the map. Totem Esports are on the other side of this engagement.
Well, Alliance, at the moment, they're fighting reply. They're trying to force their way into zone. Let's see what the comms are like as we jump into a listen-in now, presented by WD Black.
Try to deny the rest here if you can. In the tunnel. See here. See right here. Threat.
See flash. Nice.
Nice.
I'm watching back with UK.
Yeah.
Very good.
Next to me on my right. Next to me, rushing.
Behind this rock.
Nading that. Yeah, they were done.
Did they res?
Yeah, maybe.
No, they didn't. It's only one left.
Watson. Dead. All dead.
It's all you guys.
I need to loot now.
Behind me.
I'm ulting high ground.
Yeah.
Queuing up.
I don't know how many there are.
Kill.
120. One is 3, one dead.
Body.
Play live.
Reset. Just third, Yuki. Go up on third. Go up on third.
Yeah.
I have to
killing
do
this
this.
behind
I'm
us.
batting this.
Here comes me.
Go up. Go up. He's sliding.
Get the finish. He's in the open. Get the finish.
Where?
On top. Where my beam is.
I'm moving up.
Push
Moving up.
this, push
Attack
this,
this.
push this.
Careful, you can see behind you.
I know.
I'm queuing up. Hackers, come.
Yeah, I'm pushing. Nay.
Nading.
Good nade on
My nades.
50.
I'm going, Akis. I'm with you.
I have to play safe.
One HP.
One dead. One.
Doing this batting.
I got a bite.
Over here.
Make sure my ass.
I don't do fast.
I got no bats.
Drop one, you can.
Yeah, you can heal. I'm slow healing.
Yeah.
Can you
They
push
didn't
this?
reset, right?
20 seconds. We're gonna clean my bed and go to me. Just third. Play for third and then come back to me.
Yeah, we cannot first.
I think they just
Come on,
res.
push. Come back to me. Pull him out. Yeah. I'm 0-7. I have 60 light. I'm checking his box here. Take 60. Nice.
It's fine, I got
Hold
it.
be honest.
Yeah.
Well, as you jump back into the game, Alliance survived, but they tried to take a couple of fights there. They did damage, couldn't quite clean things up. And we mentioned how today's about hitting your shots down. The Peacekeeper not quite connecting there for Hackett.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think watching back, he'll be a little bit frustrated because if he had connected, that could have been extra KP. But what's most important, they're still alive. They still are going to have an element of zone they can work with here. Not loads of cover, but they have the Newcastle, so that is going to at least allow them to play it. So slightly. But as we look at the map and we saw the zone 4 shift, the likes of Invictus, they've got it perfect again. It's not surprising that statistically they've been doing so well on World's Edge. They're going to be in one of the better buildings right now. Foot Esports also going to be holding the train tracks, but at the moment Alliance are trying to take it off them.
I mean, Alliance have looked incredible so far. They're all dressed in red as well, all matching red Evo shields, and they're just shredding and cutting up their opponents at the moment. Effect ain't missing too many shots. More damage being done, more KP going down to them, but teams we have lost. You've lost VZN. You've also lost teams like, you've lost a couple more teams along the way as I'm getting caught out as well by Alliance's move here. They're trying to force their way into zone here, but inside of that zone, like you mentioned, Invictus are still there, but Alliance have got work to do here. The castle wall down, and you can see, I'm pretty sure that Hackett, unless he's got an ult accelerant, isn't going to have that available again, so they're going to have to just play this natural cover and force their way in.
And as we get into the top 10, this is crunch time now for a lot of these teams, and we have seen certain successes for others, but Alliance, they're going to be struggling now because Yuki's gone down. He needs some support, needs some help from Effect and Hackies, but are they just going to have to play as a 2 here?
Yeah, you have to wonder. I think that Yuki might unfortunately be able to maybe crawl down. I don't think he's going to be able to, though. The banner is now on the map showing that he is in the death box, but Alliance maybe just going to have to wait until that queue comes up again and make a late move. For now, though, Invictus Gaming, your highlighted team down inside of that zone, right bang center in one of those tiny little snake buildings on the outside of Lava Siphon here, looking extremely strong.
Just to give you an idea of how successful IG are on World's Edge, when they do get to the top 10, they have a very successful win rate when it comes to actually being able to push themselves into a victory. It's a 30% win rate from top 10, and that almost doubles when they get to the top 5 to a 66% win rate. So we really need to keep an eye on IG and what they do in these next few moments with this next circle pull, because it really could be a victory on the horizon for them.
Oh, you can see the start of fight want to try and push as well. Hackett is down, so Alliance down to just one player. And even though that mobile shield is there, it's not going to be really doing too much to keep Alliance's hopes alive here. Start of fight, just moving in to try and clean up these KP. But Alliance making it work for it.
It was always going to be tough from where Alliance were coming into this side of the circle. As soon as that zone shifted away from them, they didn't have much to play for. They had to get aggressive onto that bridge, but it just meant they were open to a counter. They were open to another team getting involved. And in the end, I think it's going to be a sad end to Alliance's game, but they're into the top 7 at the moment. Can't quite get to top 5. It is going to be a 7th place finish. Na'Vi go out in 6th, and now we're into our top 5.
You can see SAF here trying to just clean up these kills on the low ground. They have the height, but can they get the finishes? They've got to be so careful they don't get focus fired and go down to an unfortunate knock. They're doing a huge amount of damage, but nobody is falling. The gen goes down as well from the team under the bridge, which is going to give them a little bit more shielding in this fight. You can see the start of fight want to continue this fight and finish it. They're just not going to be able to as IG now take to the roof of their building.
Yeah, it's because Aurora are above them and they want to take them off, and they will do so. Now we're down to 4. IG get another elimination, and now all IG need to worry about is Gamewood are close. I think it's a rat that it is close from Gamewood. Yeah, you can see aimbot just there on the other side of the wall. And that's their main worry right now. They're going to hope the two teams on the south of this circle will fight, and then naturally IG should just be able to push in and clean up the pieces. The Rat might throw a spanner in the works. They may be unaware of that. But look at where SAF are. Look at where Horizon and the rest of the squad are. They are naturally going to fight here on the south side. So they're both going to be very weak when IG get involved in this scrap.
Yeah, you would feel this is an IG game if they play it right. They've got a couple of armor swaps as well, you can see, but down on the low ground, maybe some problems still going to be happening because SAF know that they have to deal with this team because they could just climb up, they could just lift up, they could Valcol up, they might have a Horizon in the comp as well, just to really make a late run for it. But for now, you can see IG just biding their time. I think a lot of the decisions in how this lobby is actually going to go are going to fall to SAF. Are they going to try and take the fight with Invictus, or are they going to worry more about this team on the low ground?
Well, SAF looks like they're getting shot already, so they're going to be a bit hesitant to push onto Invictus. Invictus just need to delay here, wait as long as possible, try and look at that kill feed, hope that there's going to be an engagement happening, and then you pick up the pieces. It looks like aimbot is going to be a non-factor to Invictus because he's naturally going to get forced down by this circle.
And Invictus now just causing problems to SAF as well. The more cracks that come in, the more damage that SAF take from Invictus gives the team on the low ground more of a chance to try and push. A couple of cells going to be popped for now. As the zone starts to close, Gamewood will be eliminated. That's the solo player out. It's now a 3v3v3.
LFO are going to be stuck between two teams at the moment. SAF still holding this high ground. LFO have gone down low. And as long as LFO can avoid this, there's still a chance they can get top 2. But realistically, first place is unlikely for LFO just based on where they're currently holding right now.
And you can see the blast would probably fall as well. He's going to fall down to the low ground, and that is just going to open things up now for Invictus. They're up on that height. They're going to have to get some damage down, though. This isn't an easy as fight as maybe you would think. As if they just make one wrong step here, one player could fall. For now, though, they're doing a great job of being controlled, holding their time and letting the zone do the damage for now. They're playing it patient and, like you say, being reserved enough and patient enough to take home this win. Invictus will be the winners of game number 1.
As I had said, a 66% win rate from top 5s this season on World's Edge, and that percentage has just gone up because they've added a 5th victory to their tally on World's Edge. I said they're one of the best performing teams in World's Edge, and we see why. Their whole rotation on set right from the get-go, they moved so quickly away from Lava Siphon over towards Big Maud to play one of these riskless areas where they could analyze where that circle was going to be, where they could get that beacon information. As soon as they had it, though, straight back over towards the northern side of Lava Siphon, and it was just a matter of holding out your building. It looks simple when you're looking at a map overhead and the way they moved, but they had to take fights, they had to win those engagements, and of course at the end there was a lot of decisions to be made of when you push the fight, how you push the fight, how you force the other two teams to take fights against each other.
We'll bring Rain Day back into the conversation because, Evan, I mean, Invictus Gaming, Dan picked him, and I tell you what, they look like a great pick after that game number 1.
I'm jealous of Dan starting off the show. It's barely game 1. He's already beat us in most of the predictions. Mark, great stuff on the call, man. Take a break. We'll bring you back in game number 3. But Dan, let's talk about it. Invictus Gaming is who you chose. I've been very impressed with this team. I think that they have everything that it takes to win at LAN. The question was, are they going to get to LAN? Are they going to be, I think, patient enough in those final circles? Do they actually have the team fighting skill? Those are the things that I was wondering because they have the leadership, right? So there's no question there, but they're proving that they are the complete package again and again.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest criticisms of this roster was, yes, they can play zone, yes, they're great at predicting circles, and they're good at putting themselves in those positions, but they're not necessarily going to have those high kill games to compete with the points total of some of those teams, but they've demonstrated their consistency can kind of equate to the same amount of points that some of these big kill teams are getting. And at the end of the day, when we get to regional finals, when we get to LAN, it becomes match point format. And you heard me speaking about the win percentages of when they get to top 10 and when they get to top 5. If your win percentage is over 66% when you get to top 5 on World's Edge, suddenly you are one of the biggest threats in the lobby. And there's only one reason why they're getting that high win percentage is because of how successful those calls are, how well they're rotating, how good the positions they find themselves are in the final circles. And then, of course, you still have to kill teams. Yes, okay, there are going to be some teams that are harder to kill than others, but that particular game, it was just a matter of, you know, we're going to be patient, we're going to wait for the other teams to expose themselves, and then we'll push in at the right time.
I mean, there's a lot of teams to highlight there, and I think Start a Fight, another team that performed extremely well, taking the conversation away from IG, which I'm sure we'll bring it back to over the course of today. Nightmare Esports, too, terrible start for them. They're one of those teams in that pack. Corpa takes them out immediately, Dan. You've got to mitigate moments like that if you're going to make a jump in the points and try to get in that regional final and, of course, secure spots at land. Tougher Nightmare, but really it shifted to Alliance, who would have an incredible showcase of how valuable Newcastle is in creating that temporary cover and giving yourself a chance to win fights.
And I like that you brought up start a fight, because such an important time for them to be picking up points. That's their first top 3 on World's Edge, all split long, right? That shows how much they've struggled when it comes to World's Edge performing this season. But now that might give them a little bit of confidence to try and get those points totals a little bit higher so they can push themselves up and start thinking about regional finals, start maybe even thinking about the glorious times of LAN. But for now, they just have to look at that game and say, could we have done anything different? Could we have won that game? And realistically, probably not. I think Invictus had too much of a high ground advantage. They had too much of a god spot, as it were, and LFO kind of ruined things for SAF because they just held them out for so long in that lower position. But I think the fact that SAF were able to stay alive when teams like Alliance, when teams like Foot were in the vicinity and making things awkward for them was really a demonstration of how successful they're playing today.
And they have to, because they're one of those teams that, yes, 1 point away from qualifying for regional finals, but then they've got to win if they want a chance at LAN. So they have to be perfect. They have to play for in-game. They have to be effective in the in-game and execute to get first place. So that was what we will see. I expect more of that from Start a Fight in games 2 and 3, especially here on World's Edge. Ultimately, though, Alliance, I felt that they simultaneously showed us some of the things that they're working on and so good at the same time. You can see Hawkins on the Newcastle taking on so many roles, IGLing, setting up the cover, but then sometimes in those 1v1s, having to push and then direct the rest of his team, miss a few PK shots. That would have cleaned up Aurora. That would have given them the high ground position that I think they could have won this game from. But unfortunately, it was really then given over to Start a Fight and then Invictus Gaming, who had better positioning overall. And talk about these shots here from Graceful. Having to now take away the IGL role, give it back to Noises, and be able to frag out, it's done wonders for him and his squad.
Yeah, I think when we interviewed him just the other week on a different broadcast, he was saying how, you know, it was going to be a little bit different for him. He's kind of co-IGLing, but he's so confident with the consistency this squad is finding. And you can see, you know, the kills just came towards them. It's not like they got a victory and they just were, you know, getting 6 kills on the board. 15 kills, a 27-point game to start the day for IG is huge.
That is insane. Immaculate start for IG International, one of the teams we highlighted earlier. LFO Forever sneakily grab a 17-point second place. That was a strong start for them too, sitting middle of the pack in our regional. 14th place, I believe, overall total standing. Start a Fight Esports out of the regional final. They've got to get results. They need at least 1 point. Gaming Gladiators, who is not playing today, are the team in front of them. So it should be enough, even just with a game like this. But Game Ward starting with 6 and Aurora grabbing 9. That rounds out our top 5. Let's take a look at the back half of this too, Dan, because Corpa, they started strong, and still some teams like Vex, Element 6, expecting more from them.
Yeah, I think when you see a team like Vex down there, you always scratch your head and say, well, what's happened there? Did they just get a little bit too aggressive with a push? Were they unlucky with their rotation? I think Mark highlighted it in the pre-show. You've just got to take each game as it comes here. You can't think too much about the previous game and get too frustrated. You have to be able to reset because you don't want to drop too much points. Even though Vex guaranteed to be at regional finals, they are not guaranteed to be at LAN. They still are going to have to pick up points. They can't afford to have a dud week. Need to be making sure they're performing better going into games 2 and forward.
That is a fantastic point to make, Dan. If it finished like this over the course of the series, it would look like IG International on top. Echo Esports sitting in last place right now, finishing in 10th. Of course, Vex Gaming, no points. Element 6 as well. Nightmare Esports, who are right behind Game Ward and V2 in the running for a spot in top 10 and top 9. Of course, that would be a qualification for LAN if it ended there. Teams who need to perform. EMEA is off to a blazing start. A lot of teams spicing this up, Dan. I feel like it's only going to get better and better.
And that game previously could have been very different. We caught the end of the IG versus Aurora fight, but both teams dropped quite close to one another near Lava Siphon. They both got kind of beacon information. Aurora got it over towards Harvester. IG got it at Lava Siphon, but they both tried to take the same building at the end. But because IG got there first, because IG won that race with the beacon information, it's what allowed them to kind of hold out Aurora and make sure they were able to win that engagement. Because had they not, of course, they wouldn't have got the victory.
Well, if that is any indication of how the rest of today is going to go, we are in for a great one. Make sure to stay tuned. We're going to go on a quick break. We'll be right back with Game 2 of our Day 9 here in the ALGS EMEA region.
WD Black, the official storage partner of the Apex Legends Global Series.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Rain Day, Dan Gaskin here on the call for Game 2. We've got a great start, and it was all IG International. We had spoken with Graceful, Dan and I, a week ago, actually, on a separate broadcast, as he referenced. And Graceful had kind of given us an interesting note. Obviously performed really well. He IGLing Cloud9, getting about $18,000, 10th place in the playoffs. And of course, in the championship, in the playoffs as well in Sweden, you saw JMW help Dark Zero to win, literally as a super sub for Jim Burton, win the playoffs. Huge prize, and obviously a lot of recognition and potential showcase there, Dan. And Graceful said this: JMW can frag with the best of them, but he's got to come out of his shell, and he's starting to notice that a little bit more. I think in this game we saw the potential of what IG really could be if JMW, takes the runway, so to speak, by himself and really flies ahead and says, "I am that guy."
Yeah, Graceful was saying, I'm an old man, and I'm the one who's not scared to push in. These young guns are maybe being a little bit more cautious, and I just want to see them get more aggressive at the right times. And that's what his co-IGLing is going to do for them, I think. Even though Noises may be making those calls, I think Graceful giving them the reassurance to say, yes, okay, I think this is the right call, or maybe we should probably think about this one, Noises. Are you sure about that one? Should you try and change your decision here? You don't want too much kind of debate in IGLing. You want to be able to trust that ability, but to have someone who can just make you double check it, make sure you're on point, is going to be very helpful, especially when it's kind of a wiser head, someone who's a little bit older, someone who's got the experience and the knowledge. I really think this IG roster is going to be a massive threat.
You kind of need that person to be your soundboard, right? To just give you clarity as how does this sound? Are we doing the right thing? Great. Oh, no, you're pushing back on that. Well, why? Maybe let me rethink that. That's what Graceful serves into this. As we head into our second match, it is going to be up to IG International to push forward, push the envelope, and secure their spot at LAN. They've got 2 days to do it. They are currently in 7th place, but every other team, including many in this lobby, are coming for that spot. Will they hold on to it? Certainly with a first place today, you would think they will, but they've got more to do. More teams on the way, like Game Ward, who started off strong. Element 6, who have to wake up, start a fight, who started and ended. Plenty of those, Dan, throughout game number 1. What can they do here in game 2?
And are we going to see the same battle happening at Lava Siphon as well? You can see on your screen, Corpa and Nightmare Esports, they're both dropping there again. There's not going to be a back off from Nightmare. They want to try and hold things down. They probably went in today saying, all right, well, if we're going to be contested by Corpa, we feel pretty good about ourselves considering the overall standings right now. But we are going to get an overview. That's where the circle's going to be heading at the moment. There's a large area that's kind of taken by the kind of east side of the map, but still slightly central. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to have beacon information to early rotate if they want to. VZA, they're going to have that one for the rotation. We're going to have Element 6 up towards Trials. They're going to have beacon information as well as Game of Drones. Vexed down towards Staging, going to have to work a little bit harder to get their beacon information. But one thing I will say, Alliance do have some beacon down towards Thermal. That's really going to help their rotation.
You can see that some of the blinking lights there. It means that the same fight we saw earlier on for a team that desperately needs to get points here. Nightmare Esports, who are just 1 point behind, sitting outside the top 9. That's a spot guaranteed for LAN. They are fighting Corpa again, and I think, if my screen is correct, I've never hype called a map screen and a team fight at the same time, but I think Nightmare Esports are eliminated yet again by Corpa. Dan, that would be disastrous for them.
Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I mean, it's shame on me. It's just a situation where Nightmare are going to be saying, should we have held our ground? Where else could we have gone? Was there anywhere else to go? It's such a tough situation when there is going to be these early fights that are happening, these contests happening, but maybe there's confirmation on your screen there. Only 19 squads left remaining, and we think it is going to be Nightmare Esports, the team eliminated. And remember, Nightmare, one of these teams that are close to the chances of LAN, let alone regional finals. So this will really hurt them if they consistently are getting dropped on, if they consistently are having to take this fight. It is not going to be looking good for them as they move forward.
I don't make a lot of rules, Dan. I try to be flexible, in my life and in Apex commentary. But one of the rules I have come up with and I've been saying frequently is you have to eliminate the duds, eliminate the zeros, the 1, the 2 points. If you can get at least 5 to 7, even in your bad games, and those 5, they could be a struggle. No KP, trying to make a top 10, you're ratting out most of the game, you got 2 players down, you win a few fights and you get a pick. and you get those 4 or those 7, those 5 points, that is what I think sets you up for a chance to win and to get on pace with the teams who are obviously dominating, because you're not going to have every game that works out for you. Let's be honest. Not every moment is going to be yours in Apex Legends. There's just too many variables going on. But to give yourself a chance, that's what these teams need to do. And it's eliminating these moments, these decision-making moments that, for whatever reason, just do not go in your favor. And that's 2 now for Nightmare. 2 0-pointers for a team that desperately needs it. That will be unfortunate for them. As Vexed getting a little bit of revenge here. They went out early to start a fight. Can they do the same thing to Game Ward here as they take down Psycop?
And another team who desperately needs points as well is Scars, and they have moved very early to Geyser here, as have about 10 squads. They're all moving and they're all setting up around Geyser. Scars are perfectly situated for it with their composition as well, you have to add. I mean, having the Caustic Gibby available to them, they're going to be in one of the better spots right now to hold out and should at least guarantee themselves a top 10 unless another squad decides to try and take this building off of them, because this long snake building is a lot to hold. There's a lot of entry points as well that you have to try and work with, so it's not going to be the easiest of holds as we see yet another team arriving to the party. Foot Esports also going to try and get into Geyser. Again, they've probably got the beacon information of where this circle is going to be going, but they would have also got the information from the Valkyrie passive that there's not going to be much space to play in Geyser. Everyone has already taken those buildings. It's getting very packed already.
We've seen the Caustic Gibby come back in many different ways over the last few days of the ALGS, and we've also seen teams stick to trying to counter it, and that's where Seer came in, countering the Gibby. I had someone ask the question the other day, why is Seer such a good Gibby counter? What makes sense? It's you need the defensive stall that Gibby brings you with that bubble. Seer basically takes away that 1-2 second window that you have. If you get stalled at all with the focus of attention, you have to get silenced, you have to reset. It almost eliminates what Gibby does to get you and your team back into a fight and stabilize. And we've seen the intention to continue to be that way. A lot more Maggies coming out. We see Aurora obviously playing that. We've seen Fuses coming out. Teams that are saying, Dan, I don't necessarily need to match your stability. I want to disrupt it.
Yeah, I think sometimes Gibraltar is just very important to get people back to what's familiar to them as well. Years of play, having a Gibraltar on your team and having that ability to bubble down and reset at certain areas. And we've got some of the best Gibby players in this region that are being able to now get back to their very best as well and what is comfortable. I've always stressed that being comfortable on Legends is very important. There are still some that haven't gone back to it. It's not the crazy Gibraltar meta we once had, but we have a lot of variance in our Legend selection. We are seeing things that counter, and it's about these teams that are choosing Legends that are getting them better percentage win rates across the board, right? It's not about just these situations of saying, oh, well, in this game, if we had this Legend, it's saying, no, across the last 20 games, we've used this Legend and it's worked out X amount of time, so we feel like this is probably the best composition for us. There's a lot that goes into composition selection and also what you're playing against in the lobby as well. But a lot of these teams setting up in Geyser as expected after they had that beacon information. I think what's going to be big for me, Rain Day, is that Zone 4 shift. Is it going to go right towards the eastern side of Geyser, where Reply Totem are currently holding, or is it going to go western side of Geyser, and then you're going to see all these teams that banked on the east side have to move very quickly, because even though Geyser is quite a large area, as soon as that circle shrinks down, you suddenly don't have that much room to play with, and you can be very exposed when you try and transition from one side to the other.
Benefit teams like Alliance, who have Newcastle, who have that roaming cover with the castle wall. Obviously, the spot that you're seeing a Reply Totem look at now is where Horizon have actually set up, and this is a beautiful spot for them. It might actually be where IG International are. Those are the two teams next to them. Who certainly isn't, though. K-Swinny and Element 6 falling. They will go out to Aurora. Again, a bad start for a team that could certainly use it, as Reply Totem is sitting here pretty with the 30-30, firing back and just showing presence. Not much to really get done there as round 2 still underway. 17 squads left. But it has been a setup type game so far. Only a few teams rotating from the outskirts. You see Alliance as well by Lava Siphon. I had mentioned them earlier. Fire Beavers, one of the other teams. Our top performer, our second top performer in our last ALGS day. They came in second place, actually, only by 2 points. And we got to interview OJ Rain, and what might have been one of the more interesting interviews I've ever done here on the ALGS. 9 Impulse as a translator. Not sure if he's going to make that his full daytime job. He's a much better ALGS player, and for good reason. But Fire Beaver is having a chance here to grab Beacon, Dan, and obviously get an idea of where the zone is going to pull.
And as we're on board with Totem, I mentioned it briefly in the pre-show as well. One of the only teams in this lobby that has not found a victory all season long. And when we talk about regional finals, when we start to talk about match point, how important it is to have a couple of victories under your belt so that you do have that belief, so that you do have that possibility of winning games when you need to, so that you can send yourself potentially to LAN if it is going to come down to crunch time. So Totem, they're in a good spot right now. They are going to be setting up on the eastern side of Geyser, as a lot of other squads as well. I think we only have 4 teams at the moment who aren't in Geyser, just looking at that map overhead. Of course, there are a few teams that are kind of hovering around areas on the edge of Geyser because they haven't been able to get into the central areas, and they'll be hoping for a drastic zone 4 shift towards one of the edge sides so that they can at least make something work. But for teams like Alliance, Echo, LFO, Fire Beavers, they're going to have to play edge. They're going to have to come into the circle late, and they'll have to do one of 2 things, Rain Day. They'll either take a risk and just try and use Valkyrie, get up into the sky, try and get on top of a building late, or you try and fight your way in like Alliance did similarly in the last game, and hoping you can kind of brute force your way into that circle.
LFO forever. Getting into a bit of an engagement here. Corpa also near a great opportunity to get some Evo shield leveling up. No charge rifles, but G7 scouts will do. You want to head into that final circle, especially if you're rolling a little late with red shields. It's a big difference. It's 75 overall health for your entire team if you times it by 3. And that could be the difference in a couple of headshots for a little bit of time to pop a shield battery and get back into the fight. So teams doing their best to be prepared into it. It was a conversation I actually had yesterday with Hotzik. What do you do when you are not equipped to rotate? Yet that's the plan. You want to rotate, but you don't have the shielding. You mentioned, Mark was saying white shields, don't even think about it. How does that adjust, Dan? Because teams are making these decisions on the fly, and sometimes you're just not equipped. Even though you're trying to play edge, you're just not equipped to take a fight or to rotate right now based on what you have.
Yeah, sometimes you're forced to play the game in a way that maybe you're not comfortable with, and you have to look at yourself saying, okay, was that down to just poor loot? Did we not loot correctly? Did we not try and get someone on a charge rifle to level up that Evo shield as well right from the get-go, making sure that we can hit people from a distance? There's all these different variables that come into the equation, as it looks like Vexed just trying to avoid an engagement right now, but maybe getting a little bit aggressive on the team just below them.
And it comes out. The paintings will be on the display with the exhibit popped for Matafe, Tyler FPS. And of course, Unlucky trying to finish it off. They will get 1. How far can they make things happen with the car from that distance? Unlucky wants to get a little bit closer on the Valkyrie. There'll be some confidence there as Vexed continue to take on this fight. It's a treacherous one as the circle is going to move, and it's LFO forever and Fire Beavers and V2 who are outside of this. So while Vexed are good now, Dan, they may not be good in a moment. Let's go into a listen in and see how Matafe and the crew handle this one.
Absolutely zero this fight.
Okay, whatever. We should go now though.
Yeah, we go. Go behind us.
They... oh.
I will see where they go. They're not coming to us. It's fine.
Alright, let's go from right side.
Yeah.
You guys need something? I'm on 4-5. I would jump 2 beds for cells.
I can take 2 beds.
I know, I have 2
beds.
I'm dropping a stack of cells.
Okay.
I don't need
you
it. Give the best.
Here.
I got 4.
Yeah, 4.
I'm 4.
Take.
Wait for me to scan that building.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
It should be free.
Let's pop something together now.
Yeah, they should be.
Let's get together here.
Yeah. It's free. We just go into it. Come.
Okay.
And we kill them.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Wall from there. They know something. It's probably a crypto team. They're committing to guys there. I'm assuming it's going there then.
Yeah, push back then.
It's a common ending.
Just go here in the open.
Yeah, let's see what's happening in front of us.
Wait, we can shoot it, corner break. Ready?
Shoot.
3,
This one. Yeah. 3, 1. Shoot. Flash.
Nice.
Left. The other guy's cool. I'm gonna cancel their rest.
Yeah. Wait a bit.
Cancing.
Okay.
Please stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there building in?
Yeah, their building is in, so we
Okay.
can just play their building nice one.
Okay.
So it's perfect.
Okay.
Well played. There's a crypto drone came from up there, okay? So we need to be very, very fucked.
Close door over there.
No. I don't have to get a good shot though. No, I didn't.
I'll need it.
Okay. Yeah,
You
get
have
ready,
to
no?
send it in through the balcony, okay?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I'm
scanning for
picking
you.
up now.
Go for now.
Yeah. Using shield. I'm gonna play. I'm not going in with you. I'm keeping space.
Okay.
They have one armor swap up top. Watch out.
Shut up.
I'm
Watch out,
I can't gun left, but he can
Yeah,
armor
one
swap. Demon top is looking. Very slow, very slow.
Tyler, that's a key. I can't go in. Tyler, send it in 3, 2, 1, okay? Okay.
Demon on top. Just go from the top together. Go from the top
Price is
together.
1, I'm going in.
Oh, it's good, baby.
Watch the top team though, no? Joke.
Yeah,
What are you doing?
they valkyrie, they valkyrie.
Okay, it's only Sats in front of us. We fucking.
To their name, Vex are doing pretty well. They've picked up the pace themselves, but the rest of the lobby has had to do the same, Dan, because the circle has shifted quite a bit and put a few teams out.
Yeah, I think Vex would have been delighted with that zone pull. A lot of teams banking on Geyser, especially the east side, but look, it's pulled right back away from them. Teams like Alliance would have been absolutely screaming at themselves as well, but in joy, not in anger, because they were rotating all the way down from the bottom left-hand side of the map from Thermal Station. It's allowed them now to have a circle that's playable for them. If it had really shifted right into Geyser, it would have been a nightmare scenario for Alliance, but that's why sometimes you just have to try and play it slow, wait for that shift, and then as soon as you get that information, you'll be comfortable.
And I love this moment here. You see why the Maggie is so valuable, even with the rampart walls, even with the setup from the Watson. Jazz is unable to do it because of the riot drill. The impact of Maggie being able to take away and aggress on while still being a defensive legend. The other defensive legend setups, really, you could see the impact there. Reply Totem give up a spot that I'm sure they would have liked to hold for the time being and now have to completely change their game plan. That is the impact that Maggie can have, but it's also the impact of what we're seeing players do. The setup, the timing of it, it's so important. And you can see now that rotation, that riot drill has forced this rotation, which is now almost forced Reply Totem to be in dire straits here and out as the squad.
This is because the zone's pulled back towards Geyser again, so all these teams that are on the outskirts of it, they know they have to play for these kills. So any sort of audio cues they get, they're getting aggressive. Alliance are running into this fight, so Totem may win this one, but even if they do, Alliance are going to be round the corner, and there is the shots from Alliance. FUT Esports may have won that engagement, but how weak are they? 2 players are up, 1 is already down, and now Alliance, they're going to swoop in and try and take this KP.
Weak enough for Alliance to finish it off pretty easily, I would say. Effect continues to add numbers to the tally and recognition to the name. The young gun, the controller player on the horizon, has been phenomenal for Alliance over the course of these last few days, and it has put them in the driver's seat in this lobby. Even though they are outside of the circle, playing edge with the Newcastle, they've got plenty of room to play in front of them as they look to head down this choke point, eliminating the Watson fences ahead. Get 5 seconds now before round 4 closes up. Aurora sitting pretty in the middle of that building, in the center of where the zone is going to pull. Vex Gaming somehow still alive, as well as IG International. And Scars haven't left, Dan. So teams, even though it's been a little crazy on the outskirts of it all, sitting in some good positions in zone. Tyler FPS wishes he could say the same. He makes a lot work out of a bad situation. It's just him and Matafe now alive.
It's just about survival here for Vex because there's going to be so many eyes on them. Na'Vi are doing some damage. IG are going to be able to look out the window and also join in on all of this damage. And elsewhere, there's going to be 3 teams fighting on the western side of the map. But Na'Vi, Rugby, the last remaining player, no, he managed to get the bat off. Sanya's still up as well. Na'Vi are doing what they can to survive here. That's what's important. Get into that top 10 at the very least. Get those extra placement points on board and hope that you can pick up some extra KP on the way.
Destroying the crypto drone, important for Na'Vi, just trying to make sure that they can eliminate threats or vision on this setup, making them less of an easier target to approach. They've survived the chaos for now, and it's just how well can they stabilize. They've got the banner. Do they have a mobile respawn beacon? They've got a replicator right there, so if they don't, and it is in that thing, they should be okay. 10 squads left though, Dan. Set up for this high ground, pretty decent. They do need a result, but they've got to go through IG, who's sitting inside that building right below them. And you can see the battle for positioning already taking place here with Alliance. On the southern side of things, they might actually be getting engaged with Aurora, who want to hold off their space, and rightly so.
Yeah, Alliance are just going to be outside the building of Aurora that you speak of, and there's the map overhead. IG, Aurora, Scars, the 3 teams with the buildings that are still going to be in this next zone, but Alliance just outside of that as well. Na'Vi are going to have to make their way down. They're probably going to be peppered by IG. LFO, Game of Drones, SAF, they're all going to have to kind of scrap against one another as they approach the circle. You'd imagine that most of those squads will be eliminated as that next one closes, and then we'll probably be left with 4 or 5 squads remaining in this next circle, which is going to be carnage when it eventually closes, because there's a lot of buildings to play with. This is not what you always see in Apex. You don't always see a lot of buildings to work with. Maybe sometimes there's 1 or 2, but the fact we're going to see 3 all occupied by teams here who have been holding it all game long, they can have a lot of vision on these squads that are going to be rotating late.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily about vision at all times, although that will make a big impact. It's about what can you do with that vision, and certainly with an RE45, you imagine Effect can do quite a lot. Aurora playing pesky neighbor, as they usually do with that riot drill. It's been super effective so far for them. But Alliance is just going to duck down, take the patience, and understand that this isn't the time for them to fight. They will find it, as they have over the course of the last 2 games. Start a fight. What a performance from them. Already 7 kills in game 2, Dan. Looking to make it a few more, but they lose Blast and they lose Bambino. That will be the end of them, but still, you've got to be happy with how they've showed up in 2 games.
Remember, if IG do get top 5 again, their win percentage from top 5s has gone up to 71% across this split. So arguably would be favorites. Still in a good position, but they do have Na'Vi near them, and of course, Scars across from them. But it looks like we're into top 6 with this circle. A few teams, though, that are a little bit vulnerable, that have just been able to scrape their way through. Alliance are one of them, but look, Alliance trying to push the difference here, trying to actually make an impact, maybe steal a building away, but they're forced back by that caustic gas. This is why it's so important when you get these buildings to have a defensive legend to help you.
And they in many ways, they baited the caustic gas. In many ways, though, they've been baited because, of course, that gives Aurora a chance to apply pressure as well when they were the ones under pressure. But that caustic gas will be no more. They do not have that ultimate. They do have, however, a Horizon Gravity Lift underneath, and he throws the grenades, the Arc Stars, to try to apply. But look at that retreat. Aurora, so good, so quick. They saw it coming, and they backed off. And, in fact, more damage being done from the caustic gas canister than from the Arc Star thrown by Alliance, and Ranches going in with the Wraith, hitting a bunch of shots. He's going to back up now, and it's going to be Cleve who tries to hold him off. He's got a riot drill, so he should be able to at least back up and give them a little bit of damage, maybe discourage them from pushing down this corridor. And there it is. It's going to come right now, waiting for the Newcastle shield. Beautiful counterplay there. And Aurora's going to push off this. What team fighting potential we have seen from Aurora against Alliance, one of the best in the business as well. This is absolute excellence in terms of 3v3 in Apex Legends, and it is up to Maliwan to save his team.
Aurora had to push it. They were being held out by Alliance. Alliance fought their way in. They were able to hold that tunnel, and Alliance should come out on top here because they have a 2 versus 1. But the zone is now closing, and the caustic is being such a pain in the ass to them. They have to get it done. They will get it done. They're into the top 5, but of course there's only going to be 2 of them that remain, as now all the squads that were kind of listening to this unfold can start to plan how they are going to assess this last circle. Na'Vi in one of the worst positions right now. Godolphin and the rest of the squad also in a tough position.
G-Dolphin having a Kraber, though, maybe trying to push underneath Alliance's building and just make sure that they stay out of the line of fire. You don't want to be the one that everyone focuses on as you have to step out of the building, but it looks like it'll be Scars. They should go down. The defensive bombardment didn't buy too much time, and the EMP as well didn't do enough. So Taishin basically just waiting with bated breath to be able to move. He will go out, and somehow I feel like it'll be now Alliance and IG who have the best chance of pushing this, although Na'Vi as well, Dan, on top.
Na'Vi are on top, but how long are they going to be able to be unexposed? That's the real question. As eventually Game of Drones go down, we knew that was inevitable. Can IG hold out long enough? They're against 2 teams of 2 here. Their win percentage from top 5s is 71%. All stats would suggest this would be IG's game, but it's not going to be that easy. They have Watson fences down. EMP also comes down. Alliance gets shredded. So do Na'Vi, and here comes IG.
And they push up top. That means Na'Vi most likely will not get second. Will it be Alliance as well who'll get the points? IG have gone from 66 to 71% when they reach top 5. The lobby better recognize we cannot let them stay alive. IG, go ahead and do it again here in game number 2.
That pushes their win percent from top 5s to 75% now. That's nuts. On World's Edge, this team seems to be the squad. They know where to rotate. They played it perfectly. We saw all those teams move over towards Geyser right at the start of the game, but IG quite sensibly didn't go too far east. They held themselves on the western side, knowing that it could pull either way. They didn't bank on a really far eastern pull, and it worked out for them.
I mean, the story is IG International, Mark. It doesn't get clearer than that.
Yeah, I mean, what a performance. They've made a couple of endgame pulls. There's always moments in endgame, and there's a lot of teams that we watch and we talk about, you know, they're really good at finding a good spot early on. They get to top 5, but then that's kind of it, right? They kind of hold that spot. They're not able to make a play off the back of it, and they end up 5th with like 2 KP, and it's like, cool. Whereas IG always make a call to make a big play to win the game. That call was to play Roof, to take Na'Vi and take that 3v3 fight, force them down, which would allow them to go into the line of sight of Alliance, who would have done some more damage to them. That was the decision. And to do that amount of damage, to force them off of height into the line of sight of the other team, that was the difference maker, not getting knocked themselves. So IG played it absolutely perfectly. It reminds me a little bit of a game that we saw finish over at Dome a couple of weeks ago, where IG won that one as well, and they were like, we have to take this 3v3 fight inside if we want to win it. They did, and they won it straight away. So I think the calls that are being made by the IGL and backed up as well by the co-IGL have been incredible, and that's why we've seen Invictus go back-to-back.
I mean, are we seeing that be the difference, Dan? Is it the ability to have the decision-making so on point that not only the stat you're bringing up with 75% win percentage in top 5, but just what Mark brought up, the very specific execution of these final circles? Do they just have better information, better communication in terms of managing in-game?
They've got a little bit of everything, haven't they? I think that stat says a lot for how successful they are finding victories from top 5. So they've had 8 top 5s on World's Edge this season, and they've won 6 of them. There will be a lot of teams that have got more top 5s, right, across maps, but they aren't finding those victories. So it does come down to those decision-making calls when you are in the end game of when you push, who should be pushing, what angles are you watching, how weak are the other teams. And I just feel like IG at the moment, they are on top of all of those calls. They are not making mistakes. It seems like throughout the split, when they make those mistakes, it's in the early game fights, right? It's in those mid-game fights. It's not the late game. So their strategy and their success seems to be coming from late game calls. And I do feel like having an IGL plus a co-IGL who used to IGL for other squads is going to help, because you've almost got double the brain power on those calls. And as long as they're on the same wavelength, as long as they are working together on those calls, it just creates for such an incredible situation.
I mean, we saw what happened with TwitchCon with NRG Sweet and obviously TSM Imperial Hal. They popped off. And when you have 2 IGLs who know how to do things, you don't have to say certain things as well. That's where experience comes in hand, and it's certainly paying off for IG International. Alliance take another 2nd place and find themselves with 19 points, able to really showcase how well they are doing, how informed they are going into this 3rd game, Mark. It just seems like World's Edge, we know it's their map, but truly showing that is something you can count on.
Yeah, and I want to highlight as well that Alliance, that's a big game for them. That is a huge game, 19 points, and that was a tough rotation for Alliance to have to make all the way over from Thermal Station, and they made some really smart decisions on how they wanted to fight and when they wanted to fight. That fight against Aurora, it went on for quite some time, but they knew the longer that they held out, the more damage they do, that Aurora at some point would have to leave the kind of tunnel, go into the building, and then there was another line of sight from the likes of Na'Vi and Victor Scars, who were all the other side of that building, and the door was blown off. So they were going to take damage. So all these little things that Alliance are thinking, forcing teams to pinch, forcing teams into the line of sight of others. It's been a masterclass of edge play so far from Alliance.
Dan, on the back half of this, bottom 10 through 20, what are we thinking?
I'd say that there's a few teams that, again, I'm worried about. One of them being Nightmare Esports. It's another death right off the drop against Corpo, and it is slowly ruining their chances of thinking about the glory times of LAN. And, you know, regionals may be still possible for them, of course, with how close they are in terms of the leaderboards, but it's going to be a lot to do for the rest of the day to try and pick themselves up here. Do they challenge it again? Would be my biggest question going into match number 3 on our last one of World's Edge. Another team that's maybe not been able to pick up pace today, Element 6, Gamewood. You know, all 3 of those teams, Element 6, Gamewood, Nightmare, the last 2 times these guys faced against each other, they were up there, right? They were doing damage in this lobby, but just not being able to pick it up today.
And these are the bubble teams as well.
Right.
Remember that we were talked about at the start. You got VZN. I know that they've had to play as a duo for a couple of games, but then you've got E6, Gamewood. All of these teams, we were saying, they need to force their way into the top 9. They need to force their way into the higher parts of the leaderboards, and this is their opportunity to do so. At the moment, they're letting that chance slip. 4 games to go. We need to see something more from them.
I mean, the point you're making is that it's not guaranteed when you get into the regional final that you're going to be able to win that thing. And especially with all the teams, the caliber of teams that are there, they're already proven winners. These teams have to put themselves in a position that even if they do okay or they get close, they get enough points in that final to go to land. That's what they're fighting for. That begins and ends today. I feel like this is the opportunity that they do not want to miss. So you're absolutely right, Mark, on hitting that nail on the head. This is everything for Game Board, for V2, for VZN, for E6, for Nightmare. They're not performing. This is not how they wanted. Can they shift it in Game 3? IG International, though, on the top of that, wow, they have 20 points already in the lead, 48 points. We see a lot of teams end with 48 points on the day. They've got that in 2. And that final circle, that final fight, I think that kind of says it all on why they're doing so well. And let's take a look back. I mean, too, this fight started for an alliance. I mean, what a masterclass of chess right here between them back and forth.
I mean, this is the fight I was talking about from Alliance. It might seem a little bit scrappy. It might seem a little bit like it's not quite going their way. But I love the fact that they kept pressurizing it because they knew they had to make a play here. The zone is closing behind them. If they want a chance of success and winning this game, Aurora have to be dealt with. And they know they're going to have to come through that tunnel. They know the zone is going to close behind Aurora. And they win this important 3v3. That's what allows them to be safe for the next 30 seconds. Then you allow the teams across. Like you can see G-Dolphin's team up on the height there. You can see Scars inside of the building there. They have to leave. They have to fight. And Alliance in all of this time have to do nothing because they are just going to grab placement point and placement point the longer that they survive. So that one fight was absolutely brilliant from them.
Yeah, they grabbed that fight, and then that obviously resulted in 2-3. It ended up being 4 or 5 placements for them. So that fight was worth it. They risked it all, though, in that moment. G-Dolphin bringing out the Kraber and the Rampart. Fun to see, but it had not enough legs. But it was Na'Vi who I thought, you know, they might have had a chance if they were playing with more than just 2 up on top, because they did have a decent position, Dan.
I think what was crazy as well is the demise of Scars in that game. You saw it briefly from the third-person point of view. They kind of dived out, tried to get the Gibby bubble down, but one of them went down before the Gibby bubble even came up. Their composition was looking great for this final circle, but sometimes timing is everything, and they weren't quite able to execute it. And that's going to be a frustrating one for Scars, considering the position they did have. But then when we got to this point in the final circle, Invictus wouldn't have necessarily known they were going up against 2-2s, but as soon as that EMP went off, they knew they had the advantage. They knew they could push out, they could be aggressive, they timed it perfectly. And that's one of the biggest differences we saw from Scars to IG of getting outside of the building. One had a Gibby bubble, which is a very defensive play, and you hope that you don't get shot. One had an EMP and said, you know what, we're going to make everyone else weak before we push out.
Well, gentlemen, it's been 2 great games. We've seen IG International really set themselves apart from the pack. We've also seen great performances from Alliance, I think, start a fight. I've seen Corporal win their early rounds. They haven't gotten a lot of points off the back of that, but we've seen a lot of teams show up today. Maybe not the teams we asked, but maybe the teams that have decided this is how we are going to take our fate into our own hands. Game 3, last game on World's Edge. It is going to determine a lot, especially for teams like Alliance and maybe IG, who are very good World's Edge teams. Can they keep it up? Can they cushion their point lead enough so that Storm Point isn't a problem? Or will someone else steal the show here in Game 3? Let's hand it over to Onset and Gaskin to find out.
Well, for the final time, we jump out of the dropship before we hit the halftime mark in today's action, and we head over to Storm Point. But one more game on World's Edge here, Dan, and you got to say, it's all been about Invictus. But when we know there's a point sponge in the lobby taking all those points away, it means everything else is still so close. So there's still a lot of time and a lot of points for people to pick up so far in today's action, especially here in this game number 3, and we can see a lot of shifting in that leaderboard.
What I was about to say is I want to see Invictus tested in a circle that maybe isn't as comfortable for them. Remember, they're dropping just north of Lava Siphon, and we think about those 2 endgame circles very close to their local drop spot. We've seen the stats across the season. It is more likely you are going to win a game if that circle does pull towards your drop spot. We won't take anything away from IG, but now I want to see what they do, right? Now I want to see that win percentage. Can they get into the top 10? Can they get into the top 5? Now they're going to have to move a little bit more northwest. We can see teams like Fire Beavers who can have beacon information, they can move early. Element 6 are going to be happy up towards Trials as well because they've got that beacon information from Skyhook. And even Vex Gaming over towards staging, they would have got the beacon on that western side of the map, so they can also move in. There's all these squads in the vicinity that can have all that extra info. They're going to be able to move a lot earlier than those who are going to have to move from the edges of this map.
Yeah, looking at where we could maybe imagine that final circle is going to be heading. Countdown just outside of that, just to the east maybe. The drill tower could be one of those endings as well, or maybe we pull a little bit more towards landslide. But I imagine a lot of teams are going to be heading towards countdown, trying to hold down a couple of those kind of shed-like buildings around the outside of it and play from there. IG already on their way down. They love a quick rotate, and you can see exactly why. Because if they get in a good spot, they get top 5, usually they win.
Yeah, we haven't got to see their rotation for the last 2 games because they've kind of just done it under the radar a little bit. We've been watching these early game fights happening elsewhere, so we haven't necessarily seen what IG have been doing, but it has been extremely early rotates from them. We saw it on the map overhead of how quickly they were moving, especially in the first game where the circle was going towards Lava Siphon. They moved away from their drop spot ever so slightly, maybe to get out of the way a little bit because they were unsure where that circle was going to be, but then really committed once they saw that zone 3 and 4 information of where they wanted to go and where they wanted to hold. They have demonstrated they are one of the best teams for kind of zone pools at the moment in this lobby, and we'll have to see whether they can find more success here in game number 3.
Yeah, also pop in the artwork cell as well to make sure they had the Skyward Dive available. That's how quick they want to get from point A to point B, just making the most of every single piece of utility they find on the floor, and the quicker they can get from point A to point B, like we mentioned, the better for them. But Scars, this is where things didn't quite go to plan at the end of the last game. Will they go to plan at the start of this game? Yes, they win that first fight. They'll have the beacon right next to them to get the respawn. A couple of KP for them over here at Geyser.
It's Nightmare Esports again. Nightmare Esports looking to try and change their drop location. Maybe didn't feel good about the fight against Corpa. They've gone elsewhere. They've gone to Scars territory. And unfortunately for them, that's 3 games in a row that they've been killed off drop. And it really is ruining their chances of a good points total this week. And you've got to feel for them a little bit when you can't find a home on one of these maps. It's always going to be a little bit frustrating, but you've got to look at what it comes down to. Is your team fighting maybe not up to scratch? What can you learn from this today?
Just to keep you updated on the Invictus Gaming GPS, they are already inside a countdown. Yeah. So that's how quickly they went from home to away and to new home. Maybe they moved from place to place with a couple of movers helping them along the way. But you can see Echo Esports, once again, just having a very rough time. It's kind of been the story of the season so far for them, Dan. Losing one on rotation, kind of caught in a horrible place outside of Fragment here. And you can see defensive utility going down to try and stop this push, but unfortunately this could be the end of the game, and it's those damn pesky Fire Beavers who are getting involved.
Yeah, Echo are another one of these teams that is yet to find a top 3 placement on World's Edge. It's been pretty miserable for them, and that misery does continue throughout the entire split. I guess saving grace for Echo is that Stormpoint has been better. They have been able to find a victory over there, plus more points. So maybe they can pick things up as we go into the second half of today. But what is important is that still our big hitters are alive. We haven't seen any crazy early eliminations just yet, as now everyone gets a chance to really assess this circle. We would have seen it on a couple of the POVs, people who did have that beacon information, as Mark alluded to, going towards Countdown. We've already got about 9 to 10 teams that have made their way to Countdown and will be hunkering down. We've seen so many defensive legends come into the equation here, Mark. But now the bigger question for me is those who aren't at Countdown, for example, the likes of Fire Beavers, what are they going to do? Who are they going to push? Are they going to push? And how many kills can they pick up?
Yeah, it's interesting here. Fire Beavers, I think their plan is to just play the eastern edge of this circle, try and clear as many teams as they can, and then they will have that side to move in with everybody else kind of stacked up within Countdown at the moment, like you mentioned, and like we're telling you, we can see off screen. It just means that they will have a much more comfortable rotation, but the mid game for them is going to be the important part. If they can clear this side of the map and force teams maybe to head north through Skyhook, or maybe just into their reticles as they try and cross and take the KP themselves, and Fire Beavers could have a really strong rotation a little bit later in the game, but a lot of work to do for them from here.
Yeah, so much work to do. That's the thing, is when you see a circle like this, you know there's going to be a lot of teams that have already rotated there early, so it becomes for you a big amount of mid-game presence you need. You need to be picking up kills. You need to be trying to dominate certain area of the map so that when you do get to that late game, you own that side of the circle so that you can then bully your way in from those teams who are already holding it. But there's going to be other teams playing that way as well. You can see Alliance, they're going to have to move late. Totem, Foot Esports, Scars, all going to be playing in a similar way. And one thing you will see from these guys is when they hear noise, when they see potential kill happening, they all end up grouping together on the same side of the map because they're all trying to pick up that extra KP, knowing full well a victory is going to be very tough here.
Well, you can see Fire Beavers currently in a fight with V2, and V2 are trying to rotate away from this fight, go a little bit north towards Survey Camp, maybe reposition to get the height and make this a little bit more difficult for Fire Beavers. But they certainly had a go. Fire Beavers wanted to get involved and wanted to, like I mentioned, be aggressive and take the fight. They also know that they've got the armor advantage, as you saw a couple of blue shields being broken, so they want to take this fight. The problem is V2 up on this central structure are always going to have that better LOS from high ground down to low ground. So Fire Beavers being pretty smart about how they actually work this one. And it looks like they've actually moved back towards the high ground of Epicenter themselves to overlook Fragment instead and try and take some fights on those teams rotating in.
There's a few teams that are already having a couple of pop shots against one another on the edge at the moment. Corper and Scars are probably going to end up fighting. Fire Beavers and V2 may avoid one another just because Fire Beavers may continue their rotation on in, and V2 might be a little bit hesitant to chase them too quickly. But also down here with Foot Esports, Alliance are in the vicinity. They could very easily clash as they move through Landslide here, and that is going to be a very important fight to win, because if you win it, you own the south side of the circle.
Yeah, it's a very good point. You will have a complete south side control, like you say, and be able to just kind of walk your way up a little bit closer to Countdown. And with teams being forced to fight, you might be able to pinch them together, take some of those third-party opportunities that present themselves. But here is Corper now. Xeraphil with a nice spray, but not enough to break the shields. It's always nice to find a little purple bolt waiting for you ahead of a fight as well when you're carrying that E for 8. But Corper at the moment just trying to do what they can. Piercing spikes are going to go down to try and maybe just get a little bit of information, do a little bit of damage, but 30 spray through the window, followed by another set of piercing spikes going in. Isn't going to be enough to really set the ignition for this fight to continue. So instead, they're just going to continue their rotation. Eye on that clock, of course, with the zone closing. Always have to think, do we have enough time for this fight? Can we clean it up quickly enough? If the answer's no, you know there's going to be someone else in the vicinity who wants to join in.
Yeah, and we briefly saw the Catalyst there. And again, we've not seen her in the endgame for these first two, even though the Corper have had a couple of good fights, and the Catalyst really has helped out with those engagements by blocking that LOS. It just hasn't been a case of we get to that final circle and we're excited because Catalyst can really ruin it. And that has been one of the biggest takeaways for me, is that these Catalyst teams struggle to get her to the final circle. But there are teams that have managed it, and I'm sure that there might be more of it on Storm Point rather so than World's Edge. But now here comes the rotation from a lot of teams that are on the edge. They're starting to make their way a little bit quicker with the Skyward Dive.
Now you can see a couple of teams going out of their way to get beacon information as well. Alliance is one of those, actually gone back into zone now as zone number 2 is about to close. So they'll get the information. This is going to shift actually a little bit more away from Countdown, or should I say completely involving Countdown, and a little bit more towards Lava Fissure, the western side of the circle, than maybe we previously thought, with a potential drill site ending. So again, changing your rotation. If you're not 100% sure and you have a beacon available, go hit that thing and make sure that you can set yourself up for maybe a late Valkyrie ult for a third-party opportunity. But Corper, they've got a tougher rotation to make now. You can see all of the teams are going to be inside a Countdown. Put yourself in Corper's shoes right now. You walk through this choke, you hit the beacon, you're going to have a lot of teams LOSing you from the outside, from the inside, excuse me, out. So you've got to be very, very careful on how you approach this.
And I think we are going to be seeing a lot of beacon information gathered by these teams because of the amount of cryptos in the lobby. We've got 6. We've seen how effective it's been for IG. And there's the crafting rotation for the week as well, Mark. I mean, do you see that being a big difference maker for any of these teams, the fact that we have this current crafting rotation?
I mean, it's bag week, which is always a good one for me because, you know, we love a purple bag to carry those bats, to carry those extra nades. But I think there's not too much in there that's going to be really a game changer. It's not like they've got a digi threat in there or something like that, which can be a complete game changer when we get to Storm Point. So we'll have to see how the crafting rotation does work, of course, and if that does update as we get through the day. But Corper now, you're going to see the toughness of that rotation start to happen. They do have their backs clear, and I wonder if actually they've managed to kind of hit a little bit of luck here, a little bit of gold, as they can sneak their way up towards Countdown, and I might be in a slightly better position than I gave them credit for a moment ago.
Yeah, they might be able to be a real nuisance, actually, and alongside having the Catalyst could very much throw a spanner in the works for a couple of these teams, but still a long journey to go yet, and a lot of teams to maybe get through here, because they'll actually have to contest with Gamewood when they do end up there. As V2 are going to opt to go through Skyhook, there's a lot of different rotations you could have taken, but it's Aurora down to 2 right now.
Yeah, Aurora down to 2, and his cleave has gone down on the Mad Maggie, so they're not going to have that ability to hit the right drill, and really be aggressive on teams for now. They do have the banner, however, but is there an opportunity to res? That's the real question here. The zone is closing in around 2 minutes time as the Lions now trying to force themselves onto a fight. Scars lose a couple in the kill feed as well as E6 start to present themselves as a bit more of a threat in the lobby, but Alliance is an interesting spot for them. I think that they were kind of looking over at Vex, who are in the deep side of Lava Fissure at the moment. But instead, they decided they didn't really want that fight. They couldn't force their way in, as now Yuki's going to move back up and maybe think about round 2.
Light ammo here.
Extended light mag.
It's just going to be a situation of patience for a lot of these squads as well. Those who have found themselves within the next couple of circles are just going to have to wait it out, hope that no one gets too aggressive around them, because in situations like this, when you see a zone pool like that, when you go towards the kind of Lava Fissure northern area, there are a couple of teams that were forced to play that as well. Like Vex are in one of the best positions, Game of Drones in a fantastic spot right now. Alliance have been able to worm their way in as well from Lava Fissure side. And really, there's a lot of teams who would have been banking on Countdown that are going to have to move and move with those other teams as well, which makes it so frustrating because you're going to have to be watching your back whilst watching your front and your sides, and you can often get shot from every angle.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting here. Vex Gaming did have a beacon on that building, but the beacon doesn't matter because one has gone down, but they will win the fight. And that was IG who just went down. So Invictus try and make the play once more for Godspot towards the end game. The difference here, Dan, they weren't in the top 5, so they weren't going to win the game. And Vex Gaming, one of the best fighting teams we have in Europe, they shut it down.
Weren't in the top 5, weren't even in the top 10. IG's win percentage from the top 10 is pretty successful as well, but this is something I was talking about, right? What happens when it's a circle that maybe isn't as comfortable for them? They really are a team that likes to push those percentages. They like to fight early to try and get the best. It's kind of win or go home a little bit for Invictus at times. They're a great consistency side team, but it really didn't work out for them on that occasion, and they maybe will be kicking themselves a little bit that they went that hard, considering this is game 3 and how far they are ahead right now. But I guess they do have that to fall back on. They had a 20+ point lead going into Storm Point, but that will probably be negated now.
SAF making their rotation. It's Alliance who are holding them out at the moment. So Alliance on the other side of this. Aurora in the kill feed as well. And even though they were down to 2, they're causing problems. And that's not too much of a surprise to hear, as 2 players are going to back up now. It looks like they did manage to get the respawn in. So it was 2 players, but now it's 3. Arcstar down on the stairs is going to slow things down, make him a little bit more sticky. Then Joke's going to go down as well. Maliwan left on his own now, and it looks like they will eliminate themselves, as there's going to be a third party who comes in. VZN out as well as Aurora. We're down to 14 squads, and this is all down, this team fighting, to the fact that that zone has shifted so far down.
Yeah, when that zone does shift so heavily in one direction, it's so tough for these squads to try and move in. Speaking of tough, Alliance are fighting tooth and nail to try and survive at the moment. Hack is going to be the last remaining player up, but it looks like the revive might come through, and again, the Newcastle's so important in some of these engagements.
Yeah, this is a really touchy fight at the moment. You can see the SAF trying to take their time, use that battery. V2 will be eliminated as well. The Peacekeeper needs to be reloaded here from Blast. It's only a 9 shot though, and he's not going to be able to connect again. He's missing a few. There's 90. Can he convert? No effect puts him on his back. A big play coming in from the new addition.
Well, maybe Bambino can go for some sort of hero play, but Alliance back to a full 3. It's going to have to be the heroist of hero plays. I don't think it's going to work out because Alliance have been able to sniff that final remaining player, Bambino. They've got eyes on him, and it's just going to be a matter of hitting those shots. Sure, you can run, but you can't hide, as SAF looks like they're going to be down and out here.
I mean, it's brilliance from Alliance to win that, and it's all down to Effect just taking that opportunity, the 1v1 where you felt he really didn't have a right to win it. Well, he comes out on top thanks to the missed PK shots, maybe a little bit of interference coming through from the black hole as well to make those PK shots a little bit more difficult, but Alliance holds strong. We're down to 13 squads now, and the entire south side of the zone, it's painted in Alliance's colors.
It really is. I think the Alliance are going to be more than happy with how they played so far, but Firebeaver's struggling as a 2 at the moment, but it looks like they were able to kind of repay the favor on the other side, taking down 1. And you can rely on good team fighting from Firebeavers. That's one thing I've always credited this squad for. Their team fighting ability is fantastic, and I think we're going to see that demonstrated here now.
Going to try and stick the res here. It looks like they've bought enough time to do so. Jerane's going to be in position to hold the line and stop that push coming in, and also have the ability to res. That gold knockdown is going to be big as well because they can get the player back onto his feet. LFO Forever had no idea, and it looks like Fire Beavers should come out on top of this one. Lucky the last alive, gets the gen down, but a gen's one thing. 3 Fire Beavers is a far more scary thing, and OJ Rain will win it for Fire Beavers, but now a third party arrives to cause them some problems.
Yeah, I think that was almost inevitable with how long that fight went on. It's Gamewood who are in the vicinity looking to try and pick up the pieces, but also Foot Esports are close by. When you've got 11 squads left in a zone like this, there are going to be third parties that are happening, so you have to try and isolate those fights as quick as possible. Fire Beavers were not able to do so because they lost one of those players so quickly, but now OJ Rain does have the opportunity to maybe rat out, try and pick up some important placement points here.
Yeah, and he can hear the fighting going on around him, so he knows whoever wins this fight, that's a placement point, right? Because you're going to get into that top 10 position. Foot Esports up on the high ground here, holding things down. Nice spray comes in. That will be Game Ward out again, so another slow game from them. Fire Beavers will now join them as the solo player is finally eliminated. We're down to just 9 now. E6 inside the zone. Vex Gaming inside the zone as well. Alliance still alive, but Na'Vi bang central as well.
Yeah, Alliance are going to have to move through the likes of Na'Vi whilst Vex are going to be on the other side of them. It's Game of Drones who have the circle right now. They were also in the final circle just last game, but weren't really able to make it count because they didn't have a building to work with. Well, now they do have a building to work with, so we'll see whether they can do something a little bit different here in game number 3.
Kuya having to be very, very careful. This team underneath the stairs, they want to push them. They know they have to push them. For Esports here, if they want to keep progressing towards that zone, they've got a little bit of time, but the zone is starting to close behind them. A couple of teams making an early decision to try and get into where that zone is going to be. Vex Gaming now fighting inside of the building. The EVA 8 is singing, and it's singing a tune that they love. E6 out as Vex pick up more KP here.
A huge fight for Vex to win, but there's more on the horizon for them. There are 3 other teams that they're going to have to contest to try and get on the western side of this circle before they can even think about taking on Game of Drones, who own that side of the circle right now. On the other side of the circle, though, you've got Horizon, who are holding the northeastern side, and they should be comfortable. But this fight is a huge one as well. You've got Foot and you've got Totem. The winner of this will have the southeast side of the circle.
Well, it looks like Foot Esports have lost one. Kuya was trying to be aggressive, trying to put pressure on, but just so many LOSs for him to have to deal with. They're trying to get a line of sight denied, but here comes the push now. Notha's got a lot of responsibility for his squad here. He's going to try and stick the reds, but here comes the push once again, and whoever's on Watson down low is causing all sorts of grief to them.
Not just that, Horizon also in the vicinity, and they're shooting from a distance. They are helping out Totem Esports tenfold right now. So Totem are just trying to hold the low ground. It's difficult to do, but Horizon is shooting from a distance to help, and Foot may be punished for this.
Yeah, should be punished for this, you would imagine as well. Going to use the knockdown shield to try and just crawl down this staircase, but it's only a white knockdown shield at this point. Not a lot of energy to work with, but now all of a sudden the tables might turn. Amaz has to turn around now and shred. He does a pretty good job of it himself. One player still alive. Knockdown shield. The white one is enough to keep him alive for now. Horizon now move in. Foot Esports eliminated. Na'Vi eliminated as well. We're down to just 4.
Amazing play from Horizon. They might have dominated the kind of northeast side of the circle, but they said, look, we can pick up KP and we can hold the entirety of this side if we can wipe out both of these teams. On the other side, though, we've now got 4 teams over towards that building. You've got Vex, you've got Game of Drones, you've got Alliance, who are going to be the last remaining 3, excuse me. So Horizon can just kind of wait here. They can hold this side of the circle and hope that all these other sides are going to be fighting against one another.
And you can see Alliance have taken the high ground. They had nowhere else to go. The worry for them is that Horizon have got a Kraber. And also Vex still looking to make a play as well as they go up to the top of the Horizon queue. The grab lift to take some height. They want to fight Alliance here, and they're doing a huge amount of damage, but there's that castle wall again from the Newcastle, which slows this fight down.
And I was talking percentages. Alliance, when they get to top 5s coming into today, they had a 20% win rate. It's not quite the 75% we were talking about IG, but it still gives them a 1 in 5 chance, it would seem. It's quite consistent as what we've seen from Alliance. They're a very consistent team, but right now it's just about survival. It's about staying as healthy as possible and trying to force other teams to scrap.
And look at Vex. Vex have decided to try and swing on Horizon here. They're doing a huge amount of damage. Can they get that first knock, though? I don't think anyone has fallen quite as yet, but the flesh damage is starting to come through now as Unlucky does get that first knock. Vexed looking to capitalize.
Yeah, just trying to make sure they utilize this damage in the best way possible. Get those kills, finish up, but don't throw away too much. You cannot afford to get knocked yourself. You just need to be picking up these squads. As Horizon, unfortunately, they were in a good spot, but they were caught out by Vex there, maybe unknowingly to them.
And look at Alliance. Alliance now make their play. Effect tried to swing left to take care of the final player from one team. He goes down, and now it's a 3v2 here. Alliance versus Vex. Vex commanding the circle, commanding respect from everyone here on the final game of World's Edge. They will take the game home with that first place finish.
It really was down to just being a big presence there from Vex. They very easily could have been the team that was getting pushed, but instead they looked, they assessed the circle, they saw there was weaknesses around, they saw there were teams that were maybe unknowingly around to them as well, and I think that really they were able to catch off a couple of teams there and they made it count.
Vex, the team that I thought should have been in the conversation earlier, but we had too many storylines to talk about. Maybe they took it offense a little bit that we didn't mention their names, because they have been playing lights out over the last few days, and they continue to do so here with a dominant performance. IG won. IG did a great job winning, but Vex, it feels like they dominated in this last game. And I feel also that this could spell problems for the rest of this lobby. Vex fighting for something completely different, but taking a lot of points in the same way, Mark. If they win today, 25 points added on to, I believe, the 88 or so that they have, 82 it might be, you could 86. Be guaranteeing a spot at LAN in all intents and purposes of the word if they could win today.
Yeah, 100%. You know, this is why this week is so interesting, right? This is why this week is so vital to a lot of teams, because the teams like Vex, who are in great positions, have done a lot of heavy lifting to get here. One good game here, and they don't have to panic too much next week. They know they can just have 1 or 2 good games, and they're going to LAN. That's great. It's the teams who are kind of in that position who have a couple of slow games. They're like, oh my goodness, next week is going to be far more hairy for us than we thought it might be. So yeah. Vex putting that win on the board, I think, is really important for them, just to give themselves a little bit of breathing room. And I think that final circle, the way they swung on that team down on the low ground, just completely caught them off guard. Clean as you like, no one went down, got the armor swaps, and then it was easy from there.
And it was Vex who took down IG International, Dan. They tried to play for that God spot, as you mentioned. Didn't work out this time.
Yeah, it's one of those that for IG, they look at how they want to play a game, and they looked at how far they had to rotate from their original spot and how early they rotated. They wanted to commit to one of those high percentage places, which is what they've had success throughout the day. But, you know, you're not going to hit every single one. You're never going to have that kind of 100% win rate in a game like Apex Legends. And unfortunately, they come across a very maybe angered and hot, fiery Vex who were waiting, were prepared for that team fight, and they were able to push on because of it. And I feel like that confidence they gained through those team fights had them so scary in that final circle as well, because Vex felt like they could just take on the world. They were taking angles, they were taking wide angles, they were exposing themselves in certain areas, but it's because they knew they could win any team fight that they came across.
Oh, the fight that's almost about to happen here, Mark, and that happened near one of those buildings. It might have right here. Vex Gaming put on a little bit of a masterclass, getting in and out and around, making it so difficult for the team inside to even have a chance, and they certainly followed up with it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really good about Vex is when they commit to a fight, they death ball, right? They all swing the same angle. There's no one player who's left out to dry. You can see that if a couple of players are healing, another one will swing. It's just baiting and switching at its best. And when you're going up against players who don't miss, like Tyler, Unlucky, and Matafe, it becomes very, very difficult to do anything against that 3-person death ball. Towards the end game as well, you saw Effect went for a solo player to take him out to put Alliance in the top 2. He managed to do that, but it left them at a little bit of a disadvantage. Vex took advantage, and with 13 KP as well as the win, they end up with 25 points, which is a very, very strong game for them.
Alliance right there too in second place, and you got to say, I recommend that though IG have been at the top as well as Vex, Alliance have definitely been the most consistent team today in terms of their team fighting, their in games, and that's got them another second place, 16 points, well out in the lead. Vex, Alliance, and IG. Game of Drones, Horizon, and Foot Esports, though, having pretty good performances. A team that I think has shown up, who is in the relegation battle, who is trying to even have a chance at this Pro League next split, and also regional LAN. Not a Sincere, doing a decent job, in my opinion, Dan, of staying in the mix. But of course, the teams on the back half of this have to pick it up at Storm Point.
Yeah, and I really hope there's something better for Nightmare Esports that waits on Storm Point, because they died off drop every single time on World's Edge. And if they are going to be considered, you know, a team that is going to be making regionals and maybe even having the chance of making LAN, it has to be a bounce back situation. We know World's Edge and Storm Point can create 2 entirely different stories here. Well, it has to be their story. It has to be their time with that kind of performance.
If not, we will be in trouble. As you take a look at the main standings, our series standings thus far after 3, it is IG International up top. You had said it so perfectly that they were leading after 2 with 20 points, but it's probably going to get negated here. Yes, Alliance has been more consistent, and they obviously stayed into that final circle. Another second place. They're only 4 points behind. It's anybody's game up at the top, with Vex getting themselves in the mix with top 3. Mark, start a fight, though, a team 2 that I really enjoy looking at. They've been doing well today, and I'm excited to see if they can keep that up on Storm Point.
Yeah, definitely some improvement from them, but I think there's one word in that last sentence you said which kind of puts the cat back among the pigeons, right? And that's Storm Point. Like, this is the change of pace. This is the change of rotation, change of drop spot, change of comps for some teams as well. And finding that level of discipline to be able to flip from one map to the next and keep a level of consistency is the challenge for teams in Apex Legends at the moment. Gone are the days I've just been able to say, okay, we've got another game here, World's Edge, same map over and over. No, you got to be able to be flexible now on the way that you want to move across the map and how you want to take your fights. But I think Vex and Na'Vi actually deserve a little bit more respect than we've given them. A big game, of course, from Vex puts them in the position they find themselves, but Na'Vi have been there or thereabouts in a couple of games now, and they were on the cusp of, you know, maybe thinking about relegation, maybe not making regional finals. For a good performance today in these last 3 games, they could be in those regional finals.
Yeah, they're really taking their own fate into their own hands. That's what we want to see in a day like this, where it's up to you. How do you perform? What position are you in? Are you ending up in at the end of the season? JMW certainly performing, like answering the call. Graceful had mentioned he was being asked to get more aggressive. He certainly has. He's at the top of the leaderboards with the Young Gun effect on Alliance and Tyler FPS on Vex, rounding out the top 3, Dan. It's a fitting top 3 for how the first 3 games have fared so far.
Yeah, I think when we come into a week like this and we talk about the big teams and we talk about who should show up, sometimes there's usually a big team that kind of drops off, but that hasn't really happened today. Invictus, Alliance, and Vex, our big 3, have all performed as they should have, and that's very important for them in their progression, not just into regionals, but when they get into LAN, they need to make sure they are on top of their game. They can't be kind of dropping weeks here or there, because at LAN, of course, it is just one day of play where you really need to show up or you'll be going home. And for these guys, I mean, they really demonstrated that they are a team that shows consistency across the board, and I think that's what you need going into any sort of match point format.
Yeah, to me, another question that I like to ask is, how lethal are you? I think we're seeing teams, if you talk about a normal kitchen knife when you make a steak at home and then you try to, cut it up and you're not really going too fancy, versus when you go to the steakhouse and you get the special steak knife and you're ready to go. There's a difference. They're the same thing, but there's a difference. And I think that's what we're trying to see here too. Vex, Alliance, and IG showing that sharpness, that lethality in terms of how they're actually able to approach these final circles. Other teams having a chance for the next 3 games to show that they could be lethal, because that's what ultimately wins you championships and sends you into LAN. But, Mark, let's talk about it. In fact, I think there's only one team to mention who have been our team focus over this first half. It's got to be IG International.
Yeah, I think IG have been very impressive. 2 back-to-back wins, 2 out of 3 of the games we've seen. Invictus have been holding that champions banner at the end of it. And to be honest with you, I think when we get to game 3 as well, there's also something to say about the decision they made. But getting into a great spot, being ahead of the rotation as well, and that zone 4 shift that we see that causes teams so many problems. And as soon as they see a shift and they're not comfortable where they are, they go immediately. They try and fight for a spot. And they did that a couple of times in the games 1 and 2, and that ended up putting them in the best position to win the game. This game 1 win was pretty simple for them in the end. Other teams not in a good enough position to really challenge them. They had the zone to play with, so to speak, with it closing behind them. But I think this was the play of the day for me. Making this play off of the back of the EMP, challenging the team down from the high ground, and then just letting the rest of the teams do the work was really impressive for me.
Dan, is there still more to prove for IG? We've seen them take great positions, but sometimes in those 3v3 fights, I felt that they can be the lesser squad against the Vex, against the Auroras. Do you think they still have that to prove in these next 3 games?
I think there's a lot to prove, especially going across to Storm Point. I mean, I can talk all about their percentages of wins when it comes to World's Edge and how many times they get first place. On Storm Point, they haven't found a victory yet this split, and they've had a few seconds and thirds that have come from top 5s as well, and still great percentage statistics on that side, but not finding that victory could prove to be a real nail-biter when you get into match point format, because it's all well and good getting to match point, but then suddenly if you're on Storm Point for a map or 2, you say, well, we've not found a victory all season. How are we going to be able to survive for 2 more games before we get back to World's Edge?
Well, that's always a question, and you fellas know the best at the championship. You got to swap 2 and 2. So if you get the job done on World's Edge, you hit match point, then you got 2 Storm Point games, you're going to be feeling sad unless you figured out the key to unlock it on both maps. But of course, teams who are trying to figure out that key to unlock a chance at the Pro League, that's still going on, and the opportunities are plentiful. Challenger Circuit number 4, registration closes January 4th, and we're going to keep an eye on our challenge in circuit number 3, which it is already closed. That was yesterday, our last opportunity, but we'll let you know who wins that one. Again, teams who are now in our 23rd to 30th spot after today, that's where they end. We'll know those teams. They will have a chance to get back into Pro League, but they will have to fight their way with these other challenge and circuit teams to get a spot. So it's a deadly situation. You definitely want to come out on top and make sure you have your best performance today. It's do or die a little bit. We're halfway through, but one of my favorite things is happening. We're switching maps. Storm Point coming up after this.
WD Black, the official storage partner of the Apex Legends Global Series.
Well, life is good when you get to cast Storm Point, but also when you get to cast it with an award-nominated play-by-play caster. I had to bring it up. Mark, you know, it's just a privilege for me to be able to bring in this game for with you as we switch maps. And, you know, from the horse's mouth, man, you know, I mean, congratulations. Obviously, Pansy won, but in my hearts, I know the Apex community's hearts. You won. You won for us. You won for me.
Yeah, I was. Let's not talk about it, right? Congratulations, Pansy. Completely deserved it. She's amazing. But yeah, very strange, surreal situation. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about Storm Point. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about the games that are going on. Because I lost. Let's talk. I'm checking.
Great setup though, Mark. I mean, too, just the fact that we've got. The stakes are raising. I mean, if you haven't experienced that all week, it is now the time that things are getting to that high point. And so I'm ready for it. I'm excited for it. And I can't wait to see what changes happen on Storm Point.
Yeah, I'm looking for comp changes. I'm looking for if there's going to be any more contests, because we did see a couple on World's Edge. Are we going to have comfortable landing spots? Even in this first game, it could completely throw a team off if we don't see a drop which they might have thought was comfortable and might have thought was somewhere where they're going to call home. All of a sudden, you got a nightmare in the back of your head for the next 2 games after this one. So looking across the map overhead here, it looks like we're pretty comfortable for drop spots. No real contesting going down, and I think that's good news, not only for us, not only for the people at home, but also the lobby as well. But I might stand corrected, because V2 and Scars, I caught them out of the corner of my eye down there.
Ooh.
Fish farms, things are looking a little bit fishy.
May need to switch over to that as soon as we can. Here it is, V2 getting into the action, and with the Prowler hits a lot of shots from the burst. Impressed by Lazan. Can he do it again? Kicks once, waits for the second. A little bit of a mind game here. Maybe waiting for Joke to move around the corner. Can he get an advantage while they hold and stall out the neutrality of that first fight? Joke on the blue, maybe the most in terms of armor. Oh my goodness, the Prowler right back from Jerovic. And Scars are feeling confident, but they're eliminated as Joke swings around the back with the wingman. So V2, team that needed it, Mark, they're out early after that engagement at Fish Farms.
Yeah, Scars fall, V2 stand tall, and that is such an important thing to establish early on, right? I mentioned how you can have it in the back of your mind for the next 2 games if you lose a contest here on Storm Point. Well, that is going to be the case for Scars. They've had a little bit of a ropey season so far, it has to be said. Obviously, a lot of changes from the what we would call the historic lineup, if you like, of course, Taishin, RPR, and Mandy, but the new looking lineup not looking too good at the moment, and V2 coming out on top.
Storm Point always bringing a lot of changes too, to not only the play styles, but the landing zones, as you just mentioned there. We used to see Nightmare Esports in a fight, and now we saw V2 and Scars going out, and V2 having a chance to maybe make a moment happen here. The big sign of this, though, is how much do we see change? We know cryptos come in. I know JMW, Graceful and Noises like to bring the crypto out on Storm Point specifically. We've seen teams like Optic Gaming, who will feature in North America, switch up to Bangalore and Bloodhound. We've seen that across all of EMEA as well. I mean, to me, Mark, I think this is the kind of idea that there's so many more aggressive options on Storm Point than there are on World's Edge that you almost have to anticipate that and prepare. Do you want to get caught out? Do you want to have a way to answer that? And how do you want to position yourself to be able to take these final circles? I think a lot of teams are leaning towards, let's give ourselves a chance if we do get caught out. And that's why we're seeing a little bit more of an aggressive composition come out, more so not only in North America but in EMEA as well.
Yeah, of course. It's an overriding thing I keep mentioning about Storm Point is the basic geometry of the map, right? If you're landing on the southern side and you have to go north for the circle, you're flying uphill the whole way. So that's why you're seeing like Bangalore becoming so much of a comfort pick for a lot of teams who are landing below that midway point, just because you can turn fights that maybe you would have been a 70-30 chance for you to win it, and you're the 30% moving from low to high ground into a kind of a 60-40, because you can use the smokes and you can maybe try and out-rotate, maybe move past without being seen. So all these little things that start to come into it are very interesting. But I actually love the fact that while we had this map up, we had Invictus Gaming on our screens who hit a Valcolt, tried to maybe hit the armory, but there was a team already in there. So they were like, you know what, you can have it, E6. And we're gonna just rotate to one of these buildings a little bit more north. And traditionally, we see on Storm Point, that circle is always going to pull a little bit more towards the coastline, right? For those first, the second circle, the third zone, whatever it might be. Yeah. And then we might see a little bit of a funky zone 4 shift that we have seen on World's Edge as well. But that's why you're seeing so many teams right at the northern tip of where this circle is at the moment. Not only that, like I mentioned, you would rather be at the northern tip of any circle because of the fact that you have high ground over your opponents on the southern side. So there's so many more elements to how you try and play zone here on Storm Point to what there is on World's Edge.
Such a great reference, and so many dynamics that you mentioned there that really set the stage for what the differences in this map are and why these teams elect to go at it with a lineup change. Not necessarily because they aren't performing well on World's Edge, like we have seen teams like V2 need to step it up. It's more so because of what they know they're going to be up against. And yes, the northern part, the wall, the zone may be pulling just a little bit southwest to that. Maybe a Cascade Falls. We'll have to find out as round 2 still closing within about 2 minutes. Alliance, they'll be sitting pretty. They've been playing this exact way, as you can see on the northeastern side near Lightning Rod. They're coming from high to low, and they've loved Edge, Mark, and that's just worked so well for them. But the thing is, I mentioned that lethality element. The thing about the knives, Alliance have looked so sharp in team fights, and that's one of the things that I've criticized them for in the past. Finding the ability to go ahead and be in a good position is something I feel Alliance have always thrived in. But being able to win those fights, being willing to be deadly and feel like they are threatening in the lobby, that's not always been there. It feels like with Effect, they've added another dimension to their game alongside their leadership with Hockeys, and it's certainly putting them in the top conversation for teams in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's the effect, right? Just knowing someone who's going to be that consistent. I know it's a horrible play on words, but it's true for Alliance. But I want to talk about this fight because this is Aurora versus Vexed. I mean, two absolute titans when it comes to 3v3s. You can see the Dark Veil go down as well to try and maybe cut up a couple of lines of sight from a team who was looking to poke in third party, but Aurora showing respect here as a couple of shots were exchanged between the two teams.
Branches on the Bangalore, electing not to smoke off the enemy's vision, one of the possible uses of that smoke, but Aurora sitting very comfortably. It's not much of a change for them, as they've always been pioneers in terms of lineups, whether it's running the Mad Maggie, whether it's running the Bangalore, or even the Catalyst, which Mali wanted to showcase earlier than most people. They get the job done on anything, and Vexed are feeling the pain of that realization. Unlucky goes down, and Maliwan now firing from a distance with the 301 mark, almost takes another.
Yeah, great damage being done here, but that first knock is massive, right? Because that just means that you can push, you can cross. One of your players is going to be able to swing on a fight, and if you can hit those shots, then you're going to be in a position to clean the damage up nice and quickly. So Aurora, they have been arguably, in my opinion, in recent times, the most impressive EMEA team on Storm Point. A lot of it comes down to the way that they play. They're not worried about the beacon. The comp plays into their hands and their strength so well, though, because of the fact that they can isolate fights. You can smoke off an area. You can then use the Bloodhound scan to give the information to the team to fire through the smokes. You've then got the Dark Veil you can get down to prevent other teams hitting those lines of sight and causing you problems to grief and third party. They are so good at isolating fights. It is such a feature of their game at the moment. And to be honest, when you're taking down a player from Vex who have been amazing in 3v3 engagements like we just saw in the last game on World's Edge, that's why they have been so impressive. They are just a monster when it comes to those fights.
It doesn't matter who it is. If you're fighting Aurora, you got to worry about it. Alliance narrowly made it out of that in the game 2, I believe, of World's Edge. And now Vex narrowly making out of it alive. But they do have Unlucky, so it could be worse. Finding a mobile respawn beacon, not an impossibility here, is Fire Beavers. Second place position of last game day in ALGS day 8. Feeling very, very confident, as they should. Gold magazine on the flat line, 378 bullets to spare. They're certainly loaded up, full purples here, and in a decent position on edge to be able to hold from high ground mark. And I mean, cause a little bit of havoc, pick up some KP on teams trying to rotate that northwestern side like Nightmare Esports or even Game Ward. If they get caught with all the teams in front of them trying to rotate a little southwest, Fire Beavers are going to be there.
Yeah, this is interesting here for Fire Beavers because they've managed to get themselves in a scenario where they took down one of the players from Echo Esports, and if they can finish it off, great. And then they would have cleared the complete backside for them. Nightmare Esports are going to be rotating behind them, yes, but they have the high ground advantage, so they should have the advantage in that fight. But Corpo at the moment don't look in a good position. The Black Hole's going to go down, which is going to slow things down for them as far as being aggressive in this fight. And this fight's happening over at Antennae. This is way inside of the zone, so you have to keep your eye on those white meds as well as the shields that are getting broken.
Oh, V2 go down again. Issues for V2, who are sitting in a position where they would really love those points. Not only just to put themselves in a position for regional final opportunities and maybe a land position, but also just to make sure that they don't drop too far behind when it comes to the regional final, which it seems like they will not even be guaranteeing a spot in yet. And that is where you start to get a little scared. There are teams performing below them pretty well, and some teams even for relegation having a chance to move ahead. Corpa, though, I think they've been a strong team fighting team. They haven't gotten a lot of points beside their early engagements. They've done well. Here we are with Alliance. Effect. This is always a dangerous spot for me. I see him hit so much damage. Even a headshot or two shifts the difference, and Fortis is not as sincere down away. In fact, they get Dazo. And it's Rugby and Sanya. Just from that medium to long-range pressure from Alliance, they're so deadly, able to take down one of Na'Vi and completely push them back in this fight.
Yeah, really, really good again from Alliance. You saw the initial damage being done by Effect and then taking advantage with the G7 Scout coming in from Yuki. That combination of weapons, lines of sight, it means that everybody is playing for each other, watching those shoulders. Now you can see they're desperate to move in and clean up this fight. And if you're looking at the top left-hand side of your screen as the spray comes in as well, they have the next beacon information. They actually went, I believe, through Thunderwatch to get that. And by doing so, you can see what a great spot they are in if they can clear out the northern side of this zone.
And they certainly look like they're going to be in a position too. All set up. And this is what I love the Newcastle for, especially in Stormpoint. We saw it pioneered in the championships by 100 Thieves, and Onmu and Scurry and Vaxeline did a great job of getting 5th place, earning $100,000, but also being a little unrecognized at the moment because the comp of Seer and Horizon and Valkyrie was just that much more exciting and interesting, played by Furia, played by TSM at a certain point, played by a lot of high-level EMEA teams who ended up switching back into the Caustic Gibby in that last day. But now Newcastle, having gotten buffs since that moment, so good. And from an IGL perspective, Mark, I kind of love it. The Castle Wall can be a great repositioning tool. You put yourselves in a good spot with VZN. Hold that thought. In trouble, a team we had highlighted, winners of our last day in the ALGS, under trouble here, under duress by Foot Esports.
Yeah, they certainly are, but Foot Esports not having it easy here by any sense of the imagination. VZN eliminated, but now third party is coming in as well. So Foot, who take the decision to try and push that fight, have left themselves exposed, and I think it's Na'Vi who are looking to move in. Yes, it is just the 2 players here for Na'Vi, but still doing damage in the lobby.
Impressive stuff. Engagements all around. 14 squads still left. Zone 3 has 2 minutes and 8 seconds before it starts to pull. Things getting tighter in Stormpoint as they would. And as the lobby enters its 4th game, and about halfway of that game, these teams know what is on the line. A spot in the regional final, a spot maybe for LAN. Alliance certainly commanding in the lead. Number 2 overall in total points, but with a win here, only 3 points behind IG International, would certainly put themselves in the driver's seat. And we had just come off talking about Alliance Effect, but also Alliance Hockey's on the Newcastle IGLing. The defensive utility with a shield for himself, Mark, I love that because the castle wall, so good for your team, so good for repositioning, finding a spot when there is no spot in a map like Storm Point, but you still have the ability for Hockeys to keep himself alive, be a little bit selfish, and then make the big play with the res that Newcastle brings to the table. I think it's a great fit for him.
Yeah, I love the fact that he can swing as well, right? If the Yuki and Effect are holding an angle, doing damage, then Hockeys can swing, and usually if you swing and you get focused a little bit, that's it, right? But getting that mobile shield down means you can just hold that angle for a little bit longer. But I actually want to highlight the carnage that's going to be going down here at Checkpoint. Great job from the observers to catch this. There's Fire Beavers, Aurora, Reply Totem, and Nightmare Esports all trying to play Knight's neighbor at the moment, but they've all got to leave because that zone is closing behind them in 50 seconds, so somebody has to die.
Nightmare has the chance to get out in front as well, and they are going to be funneling into IG International. Keep an eye on that. And it's going to be who decides to move first. Nobody wants to give up their backside. No one also wants to be caught last. So Fire Beavers trying to do as much damage as they can. See if the answer shows up for them. Like waiting for the answers on a test to appear. Maybe a friend took it last year, not this time around, as the decisions are constantly changing. 9 Impulse doesn't want to drop just yet, and Arcstar is enough for them to keep the pressure on, Mark, but that's what they need, pressure right now. 20 seconds left. They've got to finish off this KP, otherwise this team is going to be behind them as they try to rotate in.
I mean, this is the difficulty, right? You want to try and finish a fight off quickly, but you also know if it takes more than 20, 30 seconds, you're going to get third-partied, and then that third party, they've got someone else to worry about. So it's a game of kind of chicken at the moment between all the teams here at Checkpoint. And the thing is, they're all going to have to be forced through this choke to the left that you're looking at now for Fire Beavers. Who's waiting there? Invictus. They've got the drone out as well. They're going to get all this information, and Invictus could move in potentially here and clean up a lot of KP, but for now, Fire Beavers trying to cut some players down ahead of them. They're not just getting those knocks, though.
Oh, Jazz falls as well, and Aurora with a Dark Veil up, restricting vision, and maybe the time that you need to see the most. Aurora out in front in terms of the choke point, and it's put Fire Beavers in a tricky situation. They do have a skyward dive from Taskmaster, but he knows that going up into the air might just be a worse opportunity for them to survive than staying down and trying to take a fight. And that, as I had mentioned earlier, it all funnels into IG International, who are holding down this building. No EMP from Noises, so that will be a relief that they don't have to deal with that one as well, but certainly going to be difficult breaking down the perimeter securities and pushing up the staircase, which Noises is holding with the car.
I think the craziest thing about this situation, as we do finally see Nightmare Esports eliminated, that every team who left Checkpoint managed to survive up until that point. So that was pretty wild. Corpa go down, Fire Beaver's still alive on the outside of this building, and the danger now is for the rest of the lobby. Fire Beavers all leveled up on those Evo shields. Aurora now moving into the same building, I believe, as IG International. So this could be a hell of a fight. The difficulty here for IG is I'm pretty sure the armor advantage is with Aurora.
Piercing spikes laid down for Maliwan, showcasing exactly what Catalyst can do, not just in ALGS, not just in competitive play, at the highest level of competitive play with one of the best team fighting teams in the world, Aurora. Maliwan and Cleve and Ranches. They've got plenty of utility here, but still trying to destroy the Jin up on top in the stairs to make sure they have a clean way to push. And again, better to stay alive and get those placement points as they both just earned instead of pushing the envelope and dying too early. Na'Vi will fall as well. Alliance Yuki makes sure of that. Fire Beaver still in their engagement inside that building, and IG International still holding above from Aurora with start a fight on the building outside, Mark. So everyone trying to show presence with enough of this space being taken already that it's going to cause some trouble somewhere, but we just don't know who's going to do it. Is it going to be start a fight? Who falls down here? Fire Beaver certainly almost trying to make so, but it's not going to be enough. I think they will be able to escape just for now.
Well, firstly, that was a weird noise for me to make. Unfortunately, it was Taskmaster who made me make it because that spray where the flatline was beautiful. 136, I think it was, in total. The interesting thing for me here is Alliance, the only team outside of the zone, are now making their move in as well from the eastern side. LFO forever trying to hold them out, but inside of the zone, it's Fire Beavers still up on this high ground, still just shredding away at anyone who's trying to move on the edge. And I tell you what, Taskmaster's got one of the best aims in the game, and when you put a flatline in his hand, that control that he has of the weapon is absolutely impeccable.
70 points for Fire Beavers puts them outside of the top 10. It's the team that took second place in day 7. Can they do it again? Squad still left here. Round 4 closing up. There's a little, and although it may seem still all on the surface, it is not. This is going to be a fight. E6 want to win. It's against the trying to figure out if they can come out on top. They desperately need these points. Let's see if they can get it.
I do indeed. It's going to be E6 now who are trying to survive, and it looks like they've got the damage down they need. Hackers has fallen, so Alliance on the back foot in this fight. E6, who have been holed up in the armory for the majority of this game, get that kill that they needed to close down Alliance, and now they can reset. Nobody else in the vicinity to cause them any problems here. Well, it's going to be... We're getting towards the end game now. E6, you saw them win that fight. They have the issue, though, of everybody else being inside of these buildings who would have watched that fight go down for quite some time. They now have to move in. They have the zone at their back, so you would imagine that E6 are going to come under fire. Fire Beavers on the other side of zone as well on the roof. They could be in some problems as well as they have to move in. They might be forced to make that fight. But look at Game Ward. YOLO on the outside here, just staying alive, doing what he can for his team. And Fire Beavers more than aware of his position, just trying to hold him out for as long as they possibly can. And I think there actually might be more than one player actually still alive here for Game Ward on the other side of this rock. Q's going to go in. Q's going to do a little bit of damage. And Rainday, if you're rejoining us, my friend, Taskmaster's still holding this angle.
All right, this is a moment here. Fire Beavers need to continue on, Mark. Thanks so much for obviously holding it down here. Start a fight. Aurora still in that building. IG International too. Can IG International make it 3 out of 4 and really showcase the world that they are ready to play when it comes to LAN? I certainly think that this would be a statement, especially to do it on Stormpoint.
Well, Stormpoint, of course. Usually we're talking about the craziness of end circles, a little bit of open ground to have to play with, but for now, it's building upon building. It's almost a World's Edge-esque finish as E6 finally make their way towards that fence. They managed to cross without taking in too much damage. Starfight Esports are going to have to deal with them. You're also seeing the Bangalore go down, and that Rolling Thunder might cause some problems. The Seer Exhibit is going down as well to give information to Fire Beavers on where all of these teams are, but everyone is safe for now. But SAF might be in the best position. Taskmaster's still up on this high ground, and Firebeaver's doing such a great job here to just control the height, as all of these teams now will have to leave at some point.
Fire Beavers doing their absolute best to try to make this happen, and they're on the high ground like you mentioned, but it is Game Ward going down here as well. Ranch is finding a few kills too, so Aurora looking to make their move, Mark. This is huge for them, and IG International under duress as well. Aurora looking to stabilize, but it's still side comp from Game Ward, who need these points, as well as start a fight on the back left side of all of this, looking to see if they can hold their territory, and Game Ward still under pressure, but surviving at least for now.
Surviving for now. But for now, isn't going to be good enough towards this end game. You can see that Invictus, who have been in this position for the entirety of the game, are still managing to hold it down. Are they going to be able to pull out another end game play that can win them this game? The difficulty with teams being stacked up in and around them is if they have to leave this building, so many of the lines of sight, the doorways, whatever it is to leave, are going to be covered by another team. They're kind of being helped out a little bit by E6 though, because E6 causing problems for this team on this side of the building means that Game will be eliminated. Case when he gets the crack with his shield, has to hit the reload, but will be re-challenged. The help is there, and they will win that fight. SAF will fall, and the res should be able to come in pretty comfortably here.
Oh, look at this. Start a fight, finally go down. Element 6, hello, and welcome to Stormpoint. We've been waiting for you to show up. They've got 10 kills in this game, Mark, so Element 6 making a play that they need to push themselves out of the 10th place position into a spot maybe for LAN, but they've got to get through Fire Beavers, and of course they've got to get through IG and Aurora, who sit pretty still inside the building as the final round begins to close. Someone is going to have to take down the top dogs, and someone might have to make a play without letting the game make a play for them. Without letting the game make a play for them.
Well, AJ Ren's doing a good job with the scout at the moment. Still got ammo to work with as well to keep just harassing these teams. You can see IG and Aurora can't coexist forever here. One team is going to have to take on the other, and maybe Fire Beavers are just going to be watching the outside of this. But at the moment, Fire Beavers' attention is taken away by E6. Case Winnie and Slayer surviving, but in around 3 seconds time, they're going to have to move into the open ground. And there is A little bit of a piercing spike to go down as well. Aurora have decided to try and swing on this as well. Graceful's trying to take a little bit of a peek down, but Aurora not showing at all as the Dark Veil goes down to cut off those lines of sight, but they didn't cut it off enough. You can see the building has stopped that, and now Fire Beavers and IG can cut down all of the Aurora members.
Oh my goodness. Look at what is happening here for Aurora. They're fighting inside. Finally, International member left. Aurora Cleave falls. The Dark Veil will come down, and IG International, are you kidding me? Are they going to do it? Are they going to win their third game of the entire day out of 4? What a performance. IG International telling the entire international community of Apex, we are here.
Some of the best endgame management you will see in Apex Legends is coming out of Invictus at the moment. I don't know how they're doing it. We need to go back and watch it, but their discipline in those final moments, picking just the right time to make their plays, has been almost, perfection so far. 3 out of the 4 games, they've picked up the wins, and it's all been from that hard circle, hard zone decision-making that they make right at the start of the game. I was so impressed, and I thought for a second Aurora had made a play to put themselves in the best position to win it, but the Dark Veil didn't quite cut off that line of sight that they wanted to from the balcony and Fire Beavers above from them. If that goes a little bit differently, if it's a couple of inches a little bit further one way than the other, maybe that could have been the difference.
I mean, certainly a Dark Veil opportunity, and the piercing spikes, it felt like Aurora made the most effort to do something. But Dan, you've been talking about IG. I mean, keep talking about them. They're making us talk about them. Another win yet again, and great in-game management that truly is on a different level.
Yeah, no, I think I mentioned just before this game, I said, well, one of their weaknesses is not finding victories on Storm Point, and I almost wished it into existence, it would seem, because they went from playing, so consistent across World's Edge and having so many victories, but maybe falling off a little bit to Storm Point, to now looking like a team who can threaten no matter what map they're on. They've shown glimpses of it throughout the season. They've been getting seconds, they've been getting thirds, but just haven't been able to get over that final hurdle, with maybe some little mistakes here or there in the final circle. But now they look locked in. Their decisions are perfect. The EMP to push them outside of buildings every single time catches these squads off guard. No one is prepared for it, and how could you prepare for it? You're always going to lose so much of your shields because of it, and you're so weak to that push that comes out.
Yeah, I think just to pick off the back of it, this is E6 trying to force their way into zone, and they managed to win a big fight here to get them into the top 4 position. They got the reset off the back of it as well, due to the building just denying the line of sight from the other teams across from them. But let's keep in mind as well, it's not just the lines of sight that are being denied. Nobody wanted to make the first move when it came to leaving that building opposite to where E6 find themselves now. But Fire Beavers up on the high ground. You thought maybe they were the team to win it. Maybe they were going to have the high ground, but E6 were also giving them some problems with some damage coming in. So it was such a tense endgame. And Aurora as well. I think the Dark Veil down was that one of the moments there towards the endgame where you were a little bit worried, like, surely if that Dark Veil goes a little bit better, if they cut off the line of sight to that balcony, maybe this could be Aurora's game.
Yeah, we've been talking about it all day long. Will the Catalyst have the kind of effect in those final circles? Are we going to see that moment it works for one of these squads? And you called it perfectly during the cast when it happened. It just didn't quite cut off enough of the sight that maybe they expected. Sometimes when you're playing with new legends, you don't necessarily know the intricacies. You're aren't always going to be 100% on how it is going to cut off the sights. It left enough of a gap that they were able to be destroyed from above. They lost a player because of it, and it really ruined any sort of game plan of being able to stay alive there and take a victory. And I think that right there probably handed things to IG a little bit, because that would have been one of their biggest worries. But just look at that. That's so unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult for Aurora as well, because you think maybe you slide out left a little bit earlier, you might go down yourself. Maybe it's the 3-man swing that you need to make to the play for that Dark Veil to go down. But if it would have been perfect, you could see maybe that would have been the play, even though that height right at the top of that tower would have been maybe still exposing them ever so slightly. Due to the height of the Dark Veil not quite matching it, it might have been an opportunity to do so. But IG slide out at just the right time. They avoid the Rolling Thunder, and they take home the Thunder themselves. 3 out of 4 games means that Invictus International off the back of that one should be top by quite some margin. But 17 points overall with 5 KP down. Another great game for IG.
And they were able to use the Dark Veil as well, right at the end there. Just before the Catalyst actually went down, they were able to use it for so much coverage to get out of that building after the EMP. It was a blessing in disguise to allow them to disguise themselves in the final circle. But as you say, they will come out on top with the placement, but they were actually outscored by Fire Beavers because they had more kills. This is something we know IG do sometimes. They get a really good placement, they get into the final circle, and they can find victory. Don't have loads of kills. It's not always been the story today. That's quite a low kill game, and I don't think it will be too much of a deterrence for them and their confidence because they know how well they've been performing across the board, and that will still have them at the top of the leaderboards.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to E6 as well. 10 kill points for them, as well as the 5 placement points. They had a really good spot inside of that armory for quite some time and managed to convert it into those 15 points overall. But down at the other end of the table, a little bit more of a quiet start to the Storm Point, excuse me, for Vexed.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Vex, you know, as a team who has shown so much promise in their team fighting and their aggression throughout Storm Point games, and also the fact that they had such an amazing ending to the final third game as well. It was a slow one. It's a frustrating one for them, but it does happen sometimes. You are always going to have those up and downs in Apex Legends. Corpa, though, 7 kills on the board. Corpa still trying to put themselves within a chance of those regionals, Mark.
Yeah, they might do indeed. If they can hold it together and put some games together, maybe they will be involved in those regional finals, like you say. Currently sat in 11th place, 17 points overall in this lobby, but it is IG who solidify themselves at the top of the table. Alliance still chasing them down, though. Still good KP coming in from Alliance as well. Decent placement alongside it will keep the pressure on. So as we head into the next 2 games, it certainly isn't all said and done. The one thing that's been a little bit surprising for me was actually Aurora getting in towards that end game down and only having 1 kill, I think it was, at the end of the day. That's kind of like a complete contrast to what we usually see them have in that position. More likely it's 8 placement points and 11 kills or something, like something ridiculous like that. But I don't know. It's Aurora seems to be changing the way that they've played. Maybe it's the lobby playing out some way. Who knows?
Or maybe it's just because you've got regional finals and then potential LAN around the corner, and you're starting to notice, okay, if we have a consistent amount of points, if we can hit this kind of average, we're probably going to be guaranteed LAN. So let's just play it safe. Let's not take too many risks. I think a lot of teams are playing that way, where they're playing a little bit less risky. And that means that we get lobbies where people are able to rotate in a little bit easier because they're not taking those fights in the mid to early game. But that does mean it opens things up for some of those teams who are really trying to push themselves into the higher ends of the leaderboard as well. And that's why we've seen a couple of surprises in that top 5.
Well, Invictus Gaming, certainly the story of today with yet another win. The first map of Storm Point goes their way as well. The question is, can they keep this form up as we head into match number 5? We'll find out just after this.
Apex Legends Global Series Monster Energy, your official energy drink for the ALGS.
Welcome back, everybody, and I hope you're feeling comfortable right now. You're sat somewhat comfortable because this lobby is about to get incredibly uncomfortable for some of these teams. We're heading towards match 5 now on Storm Point here on week number 9 of the ALGS Pro League. EMEA's looking pretty fun down at the moment, but IG on top without a doubt. They have been winning almost everything so far today.
I think that was the biggest thing for me, was them answering the question of, yes, we can win Storm Point as well. That's all I needed to see from this week now. They've done enough to secure the amount of points to get into regionals. Most likely will be at LAN as well with how they're playing. But now we're on Storm Point. I'm waiting to see the resurgence of Alliance. We constantly see it throughout weeks here in ALGS, where Alliance have a slow World's Edge, but then come into fruition when it comes to Storm Point. I was talking all about IG and how good they are on World's Edge. Well, it's Alliance who have been the Storm Point squad in this lobby. Didn't necessarily have the game 4 that perhaps I was expecting, but maybe games 5 and 6, especially here, we might see Alliance return to that form.
Well, my attention is going to be down at Fish Farms to start things off. I wonder if Scars are going to have another little contest and a little poke and a little battle to start this game off. It's always a little bit fun, to be honest, for the neutral viewer to see these fights break out. And I'm just keeping my eyes here, and it looks like Scars might be on their own this time. Looks like that might be the case. Maybe? Is it looking like that, Dan?
You know what, you can keep going, but yeah, it looks like they're going to be on their own. They're going to be okay, which is good news for Scars, who are obviously in such a difficult position in the leaderboard at the moment. They need some huge games here to put themselves a little bit higher up to start thinking about regionals. But as we look at the circle, as we had a brief look at it, and we can continue to look at it, it's moving to the kind of northwestern side, maybe just far west. We might see some teams commit to kind of mill area. Also, checkpoint could be an area where people start to barter towards as well. VZN have an amazing position. They're going to have first beacon mark, so they're going to get all that info. We can probably watch one of their rotations. You could say the same for a few other teams like IG as well.
Dan, I'm sorry that I lied to everybody. V2 are still fighting Scars here. It didn't show up on my map overhead. Maybe they were that close together out the dropship. I didn't see it, but V2 versus Scars continues here, and it's going to be Taishin who gets a knock. V2 this time look like they might not win this one, as Scars will come out on top. V2 sit down. It's 1-1.
V2 were invisible. They literally weren't on the map overhead. Yeah. They were right underneath Scars to a point that we couldn't even see them. That's unreal, but brilliant news for Scars and any fans of Scars as well. That's exactly what they needed.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that on the horizon there? Just a couple of extra shots being fired into the death box. I think Scars were pretty wound up by that first instigation, but that one looked much cleaner for them, Dan. And yeah, look at Yaka. Wow, swinging at the air. Genuine frustration. Understandable as well.
Important fight to win, though, not just for the obvious reasons, but Fish Farms has a beacon that now Scars can work with. Close by, Vexed have also got the beacon, so both teams that are going to be transitioning from the southeast side of the map, they're going to be moving in a way that they could move early if they want to, once they have the info of where it's going to be going, or they may end up scrapping if they end up in the same rotation. So they've got to be careful there and have a big think about where you want to go. Speaking of where you want to go, one of our quickest movers, one of our biggest movers when it comes to playing for zone is IG. They're already on their way.
They're already on their way, but they've met someone on their rotation here, and that's going to be SAF, so they've got to rethink this decision. Graceful getting out of dodge. I'm going to have to pop a battery to make sure. It's actually going to be a Phoenix kit. I'm not sure if he's got any batteries in the back pocket. That's how quick sometimes the Invictus do like to leave their POI and get across the map. I had to go a little bit more north, which means that SAF might actually beat them to the punch here on where they want to try and play. Those little stutter steps can, for a team like IG, is a big thing, Dan, because they have that game plan in mind, somewhere that they want to play. They'll know how many teams are going to have priority to the zone in comparison to where they are, and they will pick the place that they want to play off the back of that. But once those teams who had priority get in, and your thought process of where you want to play has to change, then we could see Invictus have to play a little bit of a different game here to what we've seen with their wins that have come so far.
Or will they? Like, that's the same thing we saw in Game 3 on World's Edge, because they commit so hard to that God spot, and that's why we see these impressive win percentages, is because when they do get to the top 5, they've often got one of the better positions, but when they're outside of the top 5, top 10, they've probably lost that engagement, so they don't have that good position. And Invictus really like to hard commit to those spots that they truly believe are going to find them a victory. They don't like to play for just points like in top 8 or just play for kills, but they could be forced to if there are too many teams in those areas. You're absolutely right. We're probably going to see teams head towards between Cenote Cave and the Mill. There's already actually quite a bit of a gathering there where teams are already starting to transition early. And Invictus are going to have to move a little bit differently because they originally got their rotation spun by SAF, but I think they're just going to run into SAF again. You saw it on the map. SAF seem to move a little bit further ahead of them.
Yeah, they are indeed, and it's an interesting spot for sure for them to have to play from. Over to Down Beast now. I'm going to see Game of Drones making their very northern rotation. EK Esports and Game Ward currently just having a little bit of a, it seems a little bit of a battle right on the edge of zone. trying to fight for a beacon, but that fight's not going to break out for a little bit of time at least. But that God Rock position that we saw from Nightmare Esports, it's such a strong one to hold down. And I think if they can hold God Rock for this time, it'll be the first time maybe that we're actually seeing Nightmare have a good game, because they've been a little bit quiet so far today.
Oh, yeah, boy, do they need it. What a tough day it's been for them. And they're one of those bubble teams that we've been speaking about to try and push yourselves into that top 9 spot to get closer to those lands. Game of Drones, though, as we watch their rotation with the Skyward Dive, they have been a team that have actually consistently found themselves towards the later stages of the game. Their rotations have been really good, but just haven't been able to necessarily execute in those final moments. But I think as long as you have that kind of basement built, that you can get to the end game, eventually you're going to get used to those team fights, you are going to get points, you will find success. But the trouble with Game of Drones right now is they're kind of down in the leaderboards where they need big weeks, where they need these big performances.
We'll have to see if this game is going to be that. Of course, we still have this game and another on Storm Point before we conclude what is the final week of Pro League before we head to the regional finals to see what those standings are going to be. So still some time for them to play with, but it is starting to slip through their fingers a little bit here. As we take a look at our map overheads, I can see the Fire Beavers on the outsider zone, Aurora on the outsider zone as well, Scars and Corpa, Alliance, Vex just making their way in. So a lot of teams playing this zone a little bit more slowly. There's not as much playable area as well. It's just something to keep in mind for these teams who are playing Edge. And so we see some nice shots coming in from Graceful as well, and that's going to be Sanya, who not only gets taken down, but gets finished off by the Mong Boy.
Finished off, and it should be now a situation where IG could push up on it if they want to, but it looks like they're aware of another team in the vicinity and they don't want to leave themselves too exposed. I think that's what's very important on World's Edge, is you need to have a backup plan, and you need to have, sometimes you're back to a wall, you need to have something that is going to give you a little bit of cover. Otherwise, if you get too caught out, there are going to be other teams around that can just pick you off, and you'll lose one player, and then suddenly your chances of winning the game have very much been vanquished quite quickly. But we are going to get information on this next zone as it closes. Of course, those with Beacon would already know this, but we're maybe a little bit unknowns to it, and we'll learn as other teams have. And yeah, there's the prediction that we were talking about. It is going to move a little bit further southwest, and look at how many teams are already set up for it.
Tell you what, Graceful is doing some damage at the moment. He's swapping shields. He's doing damage to get them all up to purple, and you've got someone as skillful as Graceful is. It's crazy actually just to see Graceful's transition as a player as well. You mentioned previously, right? Long-time IGL, long-time Wraith player. Almost strange to see him just not playing Wraith. He was almost as synonymous with Wraith, stuck with it for the longest possible time. And now transitioning onto Watson and doing a hell of a job for Invictus as well. You mentioned how, co-IGLing alongside Noises, but there's a clear IGL on this team still, isn't there? Noises is the IGL. And I think sometimes when you're looking to pick up a player, you look at their character, you look at what type of person they are. And Graceful is the type of person to give input, but never be pushy with it. He's always going to back the call made by his IGL. He respects the decision and the decision-making abilities of his IGL and Noises.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that when you do have someone who is a co-IGL, that they are going to be a little bit submissive in a way and allow the IGL to really truly make that call, because if there's too much deliberation, if there's too much talk about it, you might miss that moment. Right, you might miss that moment of making that call and making that push. It has to be sometimes split-second decisions that you need to trust your IGL. So as long as that is apparent, and I think we know it's apparent with how they've been playing, then that's why we're seeing so much success from IG right now. But having the level head as the co-IGL is so important for a roster. As now, Vex, they're going to be moving down through the south side of the map. They don't really have anyone to contest them on their way, but when they do get to the circle, Aurora are there and waiting just outside of Barometer. So they are going to have to be careful. This is not going to be an easy move whatsoever.
And just keeping our eyes on the map overhead as well. I think Na'Vi took a little bit of damage. You can see one of their players is Skyward diving out to maybe get some banners and maybe get some reses off, but they're also going to land a little bit of trouble. So we'll have to keep our eyes on the kill feed to see if that trouble does turn into the end of the game here for Na'Vi. Also, Scars and Alliance, so they might have a little bit of scrap in the moment. And speaking of which, here is Scars on our screen right now. Jerovic going to get the scan down, and as he jumps into the Beast of the Hunt, we do have a listening available here for Scars as well. So let's take advantage of that. Let's jump into a listening now with Scars.
Go. Can it?
I scanned already.
You did, yeah, you did before. I don't think so, I think it was his teammate. He just fucked up because he didn't got shots, yeah. We just need to hold our back for now.
We're literally right here.
Yeah, we just red, yeah.
I mean, you should have closed the door, hermano. Atrás. It's fine, Sanjay. But we just rot on T. Sad, man. Where are you going, Tashin? Chilla, mano.
Oh my god, this spot is so good.
Yeah, I had no clue this photo is so good.
Maybe this building is free, bro.
It is? Okay, nice. Just hold our back.
On roof.
Yeah, that is not free. We just need to wait our back. As soon, as soon as our back is free, we int them. It's fine, but until then, don't do anything.
Well, back into the game as Scars do not take that fight that we thought they might. They decide to get out of dodge, and then we had what was, I would say, a discussion about making a rat play, but it seemed like everybody didn't want to make it, and then they did want to make it, and then everyone was running around, and then they wanted a building, and then they didn't want the building, and now they're sat in a corner. They went back to the original plan. Sometimes it works like that, Dan.
It was like a petty argument over a dinner table as well. It was just like, did you not close the door? Can you close the door? You're letting the draft go in. Why are you going up to that building? Obviously, there's people on it. Obviously, it's not free. But eventually, they do just sit there, and they are going to do nothing for quite some time until they get that circle information, and they are forced to move, as are a few teams. But Scars, they will be on their journey. They'll be crouching through. They know there's a team above them on that building.
It's like the worst Jaws film ever. It's like Jaws 19, the shark just swims. That's all that's happening at the moment. But Echo Esports are the team trying to hold them out, and you can see why they're trying to show as little presence as possible at the moment, Scars, because that team is in the vicinity. VZN are eliminated in the kill feed as well, and it's Game Ward who take them out. Difficulty here for Scars as they try and force their way up onto this, as the RE45 is going to be a problem, as is the Digi threat combined with this smoke coming in from Buck. This is a big opportunity here for EK Esports to have finally something to talk about today.
Yeah, it should be now just clean up crew, as they've got that knock onto Hayaka. It is going to be a 2 versus 1. Scar's going to have that 2. Jirov is going to be the last remaining player. Might get a knock and could get actually just a little bit of extra KP here. That's really annoying for the side of Echo. They're going to be pretty frustrated that they weren't able to survive that last player and get him back up on his feet, because now they're going to have to play as a 2 and try and get that beacon. But more action happening elsewhere. Vexed versus an Aurora. This is a battle for the ages.
Oh, it is indeed, and it looks like a couple of players have fallen, maybe on either side. 2 alive here for Aurora. Cleve taking some damage, though, has to drop off of the top of that nut to pop this Barry, but he's going to get chased down immediately. But chasing is not easy if he hits shots like that and sprays like that with a car. That player's going to be forced to back battery now. He's going to have to back up, and Aurora now hold the line. However, the missile swarm is now starting to come in as another team gets involved, and Vex are going to try and get out of dodge.
Yeah, we're really seeing some of our top teams battling against one another at the moment, but Vexed trying to maybe get behind the Dark Veil to use that as a cover for their advantage, and if they can get high ground and survive, they might just be able to get out of this fight. Elsewhere, Alliance are also very close to scrapping with IG, so as I say, a lot of big teams fighting against each other right now, but good shots from Tyler as he has to go back, will get the final kill onto Corpa.
Yeah, but it's Aurora's still alive, and you saw it wasn't just one Dark Veil. There was 2 that went down to cut the lines of sight off, and it looks like Vexed, even though they'll be able to get healthier as a 2, the question is, can they get this res? The play gets finished, and now it's a 2v2 as Cleve and Malawan come back for revenge now. Black hole goes in, has to be destroyed, will be destroyed. The wombo combo won't connect, but now it's all up to Cleve, and it looks like maybe Vex have turned this one on their head, but it's a 1v1, but the zone is going to win it. The zone is going to win it. Aurora go down, and Vex will survive for now.
Yeah, Vex just going to have to probably try and rat out now Matafe. No chance of him getting Tyler back up, and also no chance of getting those banners. So instead, it's about taking what you've been given. You've got a bit of KP to work with, and now it's about ratting into top 10. Maybe, if you're lucky enough, ratting into top 5. But with where the circle is going and the amount of positions that are already taken in this circle, it is not going to be easy to rat anywhere, but at least you've got the information as the seer. You can kind of keep scanning, you can get a rough idea of where people are going to be residing, but as I say that, you run into another rat. Graceful's there for IG. Remember, they were fighting against Alliance earlier, and it looks like they were very heavily taken down because of it.
Yeah, the good news is he gets that KP, though, and that's big for them, just securing that one extra point. But here is Alliance. This is the team you mentioned who were overwatching all of that going down, and now they're trying to do some damage up onto Nightmare Esports, I believe, who are still up on that God Rock in front of them. But Alliance, they've got some ground to travel, but they love to walk down. They love to jog. They've got the boots on. They've got the cardio for it. They love playing Edge.
Yeah, and they love playing it on Storm Point as well. I said very impressive statistics when it does come to Storm Point. If they get to top 10, they have a 27% win rate from top 10 on this map. If they get to top 5, it's a 75% win rate. So we'll really learn a lot in this next rotation. If they can get into that final circle, odds on Alliance going to be there or thereabouts. However, if they're unable to transition from this to the next, likely they will fall. Likely there's going to be someone that maybe blocks that rotation for them, because that's what's happened historically. Because they walk in a lot of the times, if they meet someone too early, they have that scrap, the zone then comes into the equation, and then it's too difficult to find a spot afterwards.
Well, look at Nightmare Esports. They're up on the God Rock at the moment, but they'll have to leave in a little bit of time as well. LFO Forever, they're far side alongside Alliance of this zone. They're going to have to make their travel down, but it's the teams moving down from the north that you have to be concerned about, because I tell you what, Dan, we thought that Na'Vi were done. They ain't done yet, my friend. They're still in this game. There's 2 alive at least, and they could third party this fight that breaks out between SAF and EKO.
It looks like Na'Vi are actually going to go into the zone to try and make a rotation. No, they backed up. They thought about it, but I think they realized it's going to be ticking too much. Na'Vi have done this all day, though, right? They've been consistently getting to the later stages of the game, whether that be ratting out or not, and that's what they need to do. They need nice points scored from every single game here to try and get into the regional finals.
Full send here from EKO. RE45 still in their hands as well, so any kind of close range damage will be huge. Good spray coming in here from Buck, but it's not enough. Aimbot will win that one, and now you're going to see 2 players fall here for EKO, and SAF look like they can win this one. Just swinging on the last player alive. He should be taken down. There's a little bit of a stab with the heirloom, and that will be the end of the game for EKO. SAF win that one, but where are Na'Vi in all of this? They did go through zone, Dan.
Yeah, they did go through zone in the end. They're just on the outskirts of the mill, but it's whether they're going to be caught out by the teams that are already holding mill. That's going to be the real question for me. Gamewood and E6 are already there. You've got Fire Beavers and Totem already holding mill as well. There's several teams inside mill. They're just going to be such a nuisance for all these teams trying to arrive late. Here's one of them. Totem, they've got the high ground, and they are getting kills. They will take down Gamewood.
Need to be just a little bit disciplined here as well. They've got the zone to play with behind them. They'll be fine. They do have a head glitch, and they also have the time to reset. And Sharp now on Seer is going to be able to use that heartbeat sensor to get all the information of where these other teams are. Alliance, though, the rotation they're making at the moment is so smart. They're moving down from the very southern tip of this circle to try and force their way in. Nightmare Esports and LFO, they're having a little bit of a scrap at the moment, but it's Fire Beavers, SAF, and Totem who are sharing this mill building that's still in zone.
And it's Element 6 who are now in the next zone and in one of the better spots. But as you said, Alliance with their rotation, they're just keeping an eye on everyone that's in the vicinity at the moment. They're trying to puff their chest out a little bit, do some damage, stop teams from just walking up on them for free. But I think because there's enough teams around Mill, they're all going to have to fight one another. And that might play into the hands of Alliance here. They should just be able to sit back, hope they don't take too much damage, and then pick up the pieces when they start to walk into zone.
And the only team who is inside of where that zone is going to be going is E6, though. You can see them right at the top of your screen there. You can also see the teams who have been eliminated and where they stand at the moment at the top of the leaderboards. Is the only team in the lobby as well who are fully leveled up with those Evo shields is Alliance, Dan. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Excuse me, it's actually going to be one of them Hackers who doesn't quite have the red to play with. But when you're doing a little bit of poke damage to a team, if you see they have red Evo shields, excuse me, then you know you're going to be a little bit more reluctant to push them, a little bit more reluctant to give space up to them, because of the fact that you know if you take that fight, it's going to be a tough one.
And we have to talk about the composition of Alliance now as we get to the late game. Newcastle's going to be there and available for them. That castle wall can come down, and we know how important that can be in final circles for the amount of coverage you can get, but also you can kind of leap over teams if needs be. So I'm curious as to when Hackies is going to use this, and I think that will be a big game changer for this final circle. But as the zone closes, we're down to 6 because SAF get eliminated, and now look, Alliance can just watch everyone coming towards them.
And Alliance now make their move. We have a listening lined up with the 3 players all dressed in red. Let's see what Alliance are saying.
They're fighting. They're about to fight.
Knock one. Another team coming in.
Yeah.
I get fucked here.
Go back. I need a wall. Get me up, Hackers. Get me up, Hackers. Get me up.
Safe on me, safe on me.
He's on my face.
I'm shooting.
Need help.
Three guys.
How many?
All team.
Play your life, Fred.
Stay alive with you.
No.
Nice try. Fourth place.
Well, it's 4th place for Alliance. They did what they could, but it's E6 who now make their play, Dan. They were in the God spot. Fire breathers have gone out as well. We're down to just 2, and E6, they're firing through the smokes, and they will take home game number 5 here on Storm Point. And it's about time we were talking about E6. They've been quiet all day, Dan, but when it matters, they put the points on the board.
When they saw that zone shift towards them, they knew they were in one of the better positions, but you still had to play it in a way where you don't take too much damage, that you are still outputting enough damage that you can pick up some kills along the way. I think Alliance did them a big favor because they took a lot of the sightlines away from those players that were coming into the equation, and then in the end, E6 just had to clean it up. But yeah, I think quite rightly, we need to be talking about them, Rain Day, because they are a team that can definitely make it, not just to regionals, of course, but we can start talking about this team potentially making it to LAN.
That's exactly the point, Dan. I mean, they're fighting for not just a chance to stay involved, which other teams that I kind of want to add that storyline as well once we look at some highlights are fighting to stay in that top 20. Reply Totem, a team that also I think we need to mention. They're in a place where they have to perform. Teams below them are performing, and they're already sitting in 19th. But I think E6, you're right. I mean, this is where Case Swinney, I remember interviewing him even just a few weeks ago. Mark, he's a great IGL, but he also is a player that is experienced. He's been to LAN. He's had different team compositions. They made the choice to drop Nags, and I think this has been a question mark for them to get out of this slump. Even today, they slumped, but then they've come back and they've shown they can win games. To me, E6 is one of those teams that you don't count on at LAN, but maybe we should, because they're good in this position when their back is against the wall and they have to perform. They seem to do what it takes to get there, to get to the championship, to get to these places. And ultimately, I think that might be one of the more important qualities of a team that can predict success, being able to do it when the going gets tough and still somehow find a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an intangible, right? Any team that you put together, if you somehow perform when the pressure is on the most, it's going to set you up for success. And I think E6 is a very interesting story throughout the season because we've seen a couple of different changes. There's obviously someone hasn't been comfortable or something hasn't been comfortable on a couple of occasions. And now after, let's say, a couple of weeks of picking up a new player, you would expect to start seeing some results, especially if you've made that decision yourself. It's been a bit of a slow day until this point for them. They've always been there or thereabouts, but it's just getting into that position to win a game that they've struggled with a little bit. That's the first time that we really saw them get into a commanding position on the map, and from there they were able to convert. But it just seems the inconsistency is a little bit of a factor for E6. They can have these bomb games where they'll win and they'll put 15 kills on the board, but the next game they take a little bit of I will say a high risk fight for what seems like a very low reward, and then all of a sudden they're out with 0 points. So I think just consistency and decision making is something that E6 have to work on.
In terms of where we're at now, Dan, we mentioned group stages, knockout stages in reference to the World Cup and how things shift. Does winning games become more important than being consistent? The ability to get in that regional final and just have a chance to win become more important than those teams that are third place champions, like Start a Fight, who has yet to win but has been third place now 3 out of 5 times?
I think when we look at the statistic ratio as well, from getting wins in a week and how much points you're going to be, it's very important to get those wins, because not only is it going to get you those points in that one game, but it seems to propel teams into confidence into other games to get more points just via kills, even if it's not another victory. But yeah, absolutely. When we go into regional finals, we talk about match point. We're not going to be talking about teams that have been consistently getting top 5s. We're going to be talking about teams that have actually been getting the dub and how often they've been getting that dub. Because at the end of the day, if you're a team outside of that top 9, you need to win regional finals if you want to be going to LAN. The good thing for Element 6, they could still make it on points, and they certainly are still within the vicinity to do so. I think the downside for them this week is 6 of the 9 teams that are above them, they're playing this week. So they have to be competitive. They have to make sure they're going up these leaderboards, and that victory is going to do them wonders.
Reply Totem with a very important 5th place there. Element 6 also taking first place, as we just mentioned. LFO Forever have their second really good game. 13 points there. That should help push them up. And Fire Beavers, OJ Rain, 9 Impulse, Taskmaster doing a good job of staying relevant here as Alliance I think 4th place might be their lowest performance of the day. That's how good, that's how consistent they have been. Rounding out our top 10, of course, is Echo Esports and Game Ward. Not as Vincier, Na'Vi trying to push out of relegation. Game Ward trying to push into LAN. I'm not sure they've done enough, guys, for that to be the state of affairs for them, as well as start a fight. 12 points off a 7th place finish. 9 KP. That is pretty solid as we head over to our back half of things, Dan.
Yeah, I think that when we look at now the teams that are in the bottom half of this table, we start to wonder whether there are going to be squads potentially in the realms of being relegated. Now, we have to look at that. Yeah. Remember, this is the last week before we go into regionals. There are teams here that are fighting to try and get out of relegation. You've got the likes of Echo, who had a big game getting into the top 10. Remember, they were down in like 25th or something ridiculous. So we need to be seeing now going into game number 6, some of these teams who are competing in the lower half really show what they're made of. Otherwise, it could be the end. Corpa, they're down there. They could certainly be in a lot of trouble. Scars, they are in a lot of trouble. The likelihood of these two teams now getting out of relegation is very slim, and that is not good look for, you know, a team like Scars. We know the history of a team like Scars as well. I know there's been a lot of changes. It's a very different roster, but it's still not necessarily what we would have expected.
Let's take a look at the series standings, because you're absolutely right. Dan, Mark, this is the moment. These are the 20 teams right now who in this moment are going to be getting points at all and have a chance to look at this result and say, did we make it? Did we get the cut? V2 as well. Did we hold on? Because they're sitting at 56 points, but a lot of the teams ahead of them that are performing better are behind them in the standings. Not as sincere. You look at LFO Forever, you look at SAF Esports, you look at Foot Esports, you look at Corpa, you look at Reply Totem, teams that could potentially push V2 out if they get results today. And it's a little scary. Right now, you got one game and how important that game is, Mark.
Yeah, 100%. This is it for some of these teams. This will be, for some of these teams in the lobby, this might be the last time they'll play in this Pro League split. So that's how much is on the line. If you want to keep going, you want to make regional finals, and you're outside of that top 20 overall leaderboard, remember, this is just groups BVC as well. There's another group who are watching this at the moment thinking, please don't get more points, please don't get more points, because they want to stay in that top 20. And it all comes down to this. Something we should highlight as well for one team that actually isn't in this group is Ascend, right? Ascend, this is a great day for them, because Aurora, they're down in 9th at the moment. They don't have a huge amount of points. And Alliance, even though they're having a great day, they might be just out of touch. And Vex, who are in 3rd, they're not having the best of days as well. So I think it's very important to keep that overall thought process in your head, that there's a group of 10 teams who are also sitting there watching this, much like we are, much like you are at home, hoping and praying for the downfall of teams around them.
I want to also mention this because, Mark, you bring up a great point. I'm looking at these stats. You have Alliance and you have Fire Beavers, you have IG, and you have, obviously, VZ and able to play. E6, Game Ward, all these teams are playing. KCP is not playing today. And the spot that they're holding in terms of LAN qualification, it felt comfy going into this. Yeah. Not if all of these teams continue to keep performing. We've got one game left in our EMEA, day 9 of the ALGS, to determine who's going to LAN, who's getting relegated, and who might secure a spot to be in that regional final and have a chance to make it to the big show. All of that coming up in Game 6 right after the break.
WD Black is the official storage partner of the Apex Legends Global Series.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is game 6 of EMEA, our last game, as you had so appropriately mentioned, Mark, for some teams of the entire pro split here in split 1, but also some teams will be fighting for that last spot, that 20th place in the regional final that'll give us a chance. And looking at how the maps have gone, this tells the story of who's been in charge, in command overall. There've been good third places. Alliance, maybe the biggest team missing, Mark, that has been a huge impact in these overall games, even though they haven't won a game yet.
Yeah, they haven't won a game yet, but their consistency has been almost, I was about to say unmatched, and then you look at that and it's like, well, IG have won 3 games out of the 5, so maybe take that back. But as far as, you know, zone versus edge-based comps, and where some of these zones have gone for Alliance as well, on World's Edge, they had to travel a long way for one of them, and that zone that we just saw finishing over by the mill, that's a long way for them to travel as well. So Alliance looking very, very strong indeed.
What a great story this has been in split 1 of EMEA. There's still a little bit more before we get to our ending, and we've got 2 great storytellers on the mic to tell it. How will it finish in game number 6? Who's going to land? Who's having a chance? Who's out? Mark, on set. Gaskin, take it away.
Let's see what happens then. Let's get into it. The final game of the day here for the Apex Legends Global Series Pro League in EMEA. For some of these teams, like I mentioned, Dan, this will be the final time, and we don't even get to see Scars get eliminated this time by V2 because they touched the floor for about 3 seconds, and then they were just death boxes.
And unfortunately, that means it will be the final time we see Scars in this split, and it's going to be Scars playing in relegation. That will be the confirmation for them. They have not done enough this week, and that is maybe not what we would have expected at the start of the season, but they have slowly and surely... they haven't even progressed over the last few weeks. It's been a real shame, but we'll have to see whether they do enough to come back for split number 2, because, Mark, of course, we might be seeing teams for the last time this split, but we could see seeing teams for the last time for the next 2 splits if they don't survive relegation.
Yeah, it's a very good point indeed. Maybe we'll see some team changes. I'm sure we will, of course. But like you say, unfortunately for Scars and for Scars fans, that is the end of the road for them for this season. We'll have to see what happens for them in that relegation playoffs. But for now, V2 going to be feeling comfy once more. 2 out of 3. That's a win in my book on that drop spot. We can officially say that Fish Farms is theirs for now. But when we do get to see where that map overhead is going to send us, pretty similar looking zone. Maybe not quite pulling as far to the mill. Maybe a little bit more towards Barometer potentially for this zone. But an interesting one for sure, and I think beacon information is going to be vital for teams if they want to play zone here.
Yeah, well, Nightmare are in Barometer. They have beacon information, and this one probably will pull up a little bit further north from the mill. There's going to be a few other squads that will have that info as well. Fire Beavers down at Cenote Cave, they've got a beacon to work with, so I think they'll be delighted seeing this next circle coming on their screens. Down for those teams who have to travel a little bit further, Alliance, they've got beacon information up towards Lightning Rod. Actually, there's one at Thunderwatch they could use as well, so they've got plenty to work with. My big question would be, because Na'Vi don't have beacon information, will they try and push Alliance so they can gain that information, or will they try and transition elsewhere? But there's a lot to be spoken about these teams and how quickly they're going to rotate with beacon information. At the end of the day, in game number 6, when it's crunch time, you've got to win your fights. You've got to win those 3v3s when they do arrive. You can plan for it, you can rotate accordingly, but if you're not winning those engagements on your rotations, then you don't deserve to be in the regional finals.
Oh, for esports, this is not good for them in any kind of way, shape, or form. And it's VZN who are making the push onto it. Should be able to finish this one off. The crack comes in from that frag grenade through the window, and it's just a case of connecting for a little bit of damage. 11 is enough to get the job done, and I mean, for esports, that is a slow day for them. We said maybe they've been lacking that cutting edge, and it seems to be in the case again today.
And that's tough for Foot, because that puts them in relegation territory as well. There are teams that could potentially catch them up. They might be okay, but they do have to be careful here. You've got teams like Na'Vi who could potentially steal that position away. If Corpa were to have a big game here in match number 6, they could maybe steal that as well. So now Foot, they just got to watch on, and they've got to hope that they've done enough, but it is definitely going to be close.
The VZN with early KP. As we take a look at the map overhead as well. E6 once again, it's a very good zone for them. This is very similar position to what we saw them win the last game on as well. LFO forever, they're inside of where that zone will go. And IG also hedging their bets as well. With a quick rotate this time towards a little bit more of a central position than we saw them manage to get to last time. But Fire Beavers, I think, will be dangerous in this lobby, like you mentioned previously, Dan. being able to move in from Cenote Caves, from the southern side of the circle where there's no one behind them. If they can find some high ground inside this zone, they might be in a great position to pick up KP.
Yeah, there's a lot of KP available for those teams who are moving quickly, that's for sure, because you can kind of hold positions and make it very frustrating for those who are rotating late and are going to have to play on the edge. So if you are one of those edge teams, you're looking now, where are we going to pick up these points? Are there kills that we can pick up? What rotations do we know about? For example, Vexed, they know Corpa have been rotating near them, so they might look to try and take that fight, knowing that potentially it's a weaker side that they can potentially prey on. But I will say Corpa have actually performed a lot better today than they have done in recent weeks. So it's not the easiest fight for Vexed.
A little bit of a transition and set up here for Reply Totem. They realized this building was free, and they managed to get inside and call it their own. It's very difficult to hold this building, though, for quite some time. Only the one staircase and a few windows to poke through, and if a couple of frag grenades or arc stars, whatever it might be, find their way through those slender little gaps, then you can find yourself on the receiving end of quite some damage. So Jazaz is going to have a lot of responsibility there to get that gen down in a good position where it can't be destroyed easily, and it's going to soak up any of those nades that do come in. But for Alliance, it's another test of how they travel, right? And they've had to move across a lot of distance so far today with their rotations. They've done it successfully, but are they going to be able to convert it into a win this time, Dan, on what is a very, very tough rotation for them once more?
Yeah, Alliance seem to have had a day of tough rotations, which I guess makes it even more impressive with how they have consistently been scoring points. They've been getting to the late game, they have been picking up kills on their way. So how they've been analysing the map, how they've been picking their fights has been excellent. As we watch Navi's rotation now, that's another team. They need another consistent game. They've been brilliant today. I'll say that for Navi, especially all things considered with what this team is going through. They have been doing enough to get a spot in regionals, which would have been their only target right now. Make sure we get to regionals, and then we've still got a chance to get to LAN. Most likely would have to win regionals, but, you know, a Navi roster like this, they do have the potential to do so.
So Navi, they're going to be moving past the down beast at the moment and just looking at what could be ahead of them. They look like they're pretty safe for now. EKO Esports are going to be in front of them, but there's a few teams actually stacked up in front of Navi. So if they can force them to fight, maybe pinch them into each other or mirror one of those teams as they make their way in, then they could be in a decent spot, but some good big decisions will have to be made for now. But EKO inside of the mill, like I mentioned, they're going to be on level 2. The line of sight of Na'Vi in just a few moments' time as they come over this crest. But Na'Vi are going to be safe for quite some time here. Game War deep inside of the zone at the very tip of North Pad. Hitting that beacon maybe for a little bit of later information, crafting some med kits to make sure that they're safe. But it's a quiet lobby down here. And so, as I say that, we see a couple of kills being exchanged in the kill feed. And SAF Esports will go down, and it's Invictus who are involved once more. We have 17 squads now remaining.
How frustrating is that going to be for SAF? Another team that was right on the bubble for relegation. They were in 21st coming into this, right? And they will be hoping to get a big week so they could push themselves into regional as well. Now they might be looking at relegation here, as there are still teams below them that could overtake them as well. They might just be okay, but honestly, that's going to be such a frustrating time to go out here in match number 6 and really make you sweat. But here comes Na'Vi. Looks like they want to try and push up on this one.
Oh, difficult for them to do so, though, because the Rolling Thunder comes in, but look at that spray coming in from Dazo. That's going to be huge for them. Manages to get one, but it's going to be exchanged, so a little bit of damage being swept between the players at the moment. It looks like Na'Vi have the upper hand. You've got to hit these wingman shots, though, and he's not going to be able to. EK are holding the ground. They will go down, though. Na'Vi survive, as Dazo, the man who got the first pick, is now going to have to pick his teammates up.
Last time we'll most likely be seeing EKO as well. They were bottom of our leaderboards coming into today's action, and even though they had a relatively impressive day, they had some good games, it's not going to be enough for them to be able to compete in the regional finals, and they will have to play in those relegation spots. Here comes Horizon then. They have just 2 members left, but they do have the banner, at least of 0-0, so a chance for them to get back up as a full 3. But they're well aware there are other players in the vicinity here. They have to just be careful. They're watching their back to make sure that they don't get pushed.
Gamer drones go down as well. Vex are in that kill feed, picking up a few KP to send them back to the respawn screen. Mimu going to be left here, sadly, by his teammate. Urban, who's going to maybe try and think about getting out of dodge and thinking about getting his teammate back in. The zone is going to tick for sure. He's going to have to time this one nicely to see if he can get the respawn in before he can pop a med kit, but he should be safe for now as we see a team taking to height now. This is going to be LFO and Corpa maybe potentially having a fight here, and Corpa take the high ground here at Barometer. and forcing a team down off of that high ground. Good shots are going to hit Flesh, but not hit the death screen.
So V2 versus Corpa. Corpa with the high ground and with all the information as to where V2 are. It looks like they are hunting them right now. Corpa trying to get aggressive, maybe realizing where they are in the standings and how much they need to do. They would have seen those teams above them getting eliminated. They will know this is their best chance of trying to get into regionals and survive relegation is with a huge mammoth game here. And with that, sometimes you need KP, especially when it's a circle pool like this.
Well, Corpa lose the first, and Corpa, who were pressurizing this situation, being extremely forceful onto their opponents, are now going to find themselves on the receiving end of damage from V2, who managed to reset while all of this was going down. So V2 holding strong here. But both these teams have got to be careful because of the fact that, you know, it's 10 seconds until this zone starts to close behind them. The longer this fight goes on, and the longer that these two teams commit to it, Dan, it's going to be more difficult to force their way into zone.
It is going to be so tough to force your way into zone. You can see there now the prediction and the information from observer mode of where that circle is going to be going. So those with beacon information will know we're heading close to the mill once more, maybe on the northern side rather than the southern side this time. So plenty of teams already residing in those areas as V2 still looking to try and finish off this engagement, but they've done enough to kind of thwart off Corpa here. Corpa, who were getting very aggressive, they very quickly had to back down, but because now the circle is at their backs, they might be forced into this engagement once more.
Yeah, V2 taking damage, as we do, like you say. I'm pretty sure that I said the sentence, this won't be going towards mill, I would imagine. I stand corrected, which frustrates me immensely. As you know, Dan, I pride myself on being able to predict circles pretty well on this game, but we all get it wrong occasionally, right? As Doomicide is going to be doing some damage, or attempting to, so the team's still up on high. Aurora now making their move right round the back of the zone at the moment. Fire Beavers are going to be looking down over them, though, and that is not a team that you want to walk up to unannounced.
This should be easy pickings for Fire Beavers, but Aurora also very close by. Element 6 also in the vicinity, so there's 3 teams that could change the outcome of this engagement. And that's why Fire Beavers don't want to commit too heavily to this fight. That's why they're not dropping. They're just holding this high ground for now.
Doing a great job as well. There is that first knock onto Cleve. Combination of players doing it here for Fire Beavers. It looked like for a second that Aurora managed to reset momentarily, but now you're going to see that swing coming. It's 2 dead now. The last player alive is trying to survive. Not going to be able to do so, though. Fire Beavers with a clean sweep of Aurora, and that's the end of Aurora's day down. We were talking about them as the team to potentially dethrone Ascender at the top of the leaderboards coming into today, but not going to happen for now as Corpa finally get the better, it would seem, of most of V2.
Yeah, they get back up to a full 3. They're able to res that final player, but now their biggest fight is going to be against the zone here. They have so far to go, and even when they do arrive into the next zone, they'll have to move even further to zone 3 and 4. So it might be a tough old road for Corpa, but I think that was a big fight for them to win personally, for confidence. Whether that be relegation they have to compete in, or whether they just about scrape outside of relegation, that remains to be seen. But at least they may have had the last laugh here against V2. But it's not all done. There is still one remaining player from V2 that is still alive. As elsewhere, there are several teams still having to try and move into this next circle. To give you credit, Mark, you said we're not going south mill again, and we are not. We're going more north mill. We're going kind of just east of it. It is going to be a very different circle. We're probably going to end up in the watery area just east of mill, and that is not going to be easy for any of these teams because there isn't too much room to play with.
I think I said it's actually going to go south of mill, but, you know, I appreciate you trying to rewrite the script to save my bacon, but, you know, we all make mistakes, you know, happens. Anyway, Vex Gaming going to be making their way down from the northeast side of this circle at the moment. Horizon the only team who are kind of shadowing them at the moment, but Vex will be safe in one of the buildings they find themselves in. And there's Alliance now looking to fight as well. Alliance who have moved down right to the southeastern side of the zone, have E6 for company. They also have Fire Beavers who are controlling that God Rock for quite some time. So Alliance, again, tough move for them, but they do have the weapons to do it with. Yuki, if he can hit some damage with the charge rifle, force teams off of height, he can clear the way here for Alliance.
Could be a huge game for Alliance as well. Such a consistent squad today, and across the board, they're one of the teams that gains points, 50-50 split from both placement and kills. When you look and analyze what Alliance do, it really is just defining consistency. It is not one way of play. They like to, yes, okay, they like to play edge, but they don't always force themselves into be high kill games. They will get those placements as well with how successful they can rotate and walk into those zones at times. But it has been a difficult circle for them, as it has been throughout the entire day. I'm excited to see how they try and navigate this one. They know full well Fire Beavers are quite close on that rock that you speak of, but they have been able to bully other teams away from them. So they should have a relatively easy walk into the next circle, but it's about where you go next from that. There are so many teams that are going to have that same question though on set, because this final circle is so difficult to navigate, because there's only a couple of buildings in there and a lot of open area. We're going to see lots of teams walk in late and try and fight their way into the circle.
This is very, very interesting what Alliance are trying to do right now. They're trying to force Corpa into Fire Beavers, and if they can do so, that's going to allow them to move up and take the space. But Corpa now having to kind of get back into a position to stay safe, but Horizon aren't able to stay safe. One player will fall. That's going to be Mimu. As now 0-0 backs up to use the knockdown shield, gonna jump out with a spray of his own. It's over 100, but he can't get the Mastiff out to finish things. Now it's all up to Urban. Couple of knockdown shields for him, and Gamewood will go down. Horizon clutch up in the 3v3.
Massive fight there from Horizon. You've got to hit those shots in those big moments. And remember, Horizon down in the relegation area. So that fight, you could argue, was more important for them than it was for Gamewood. Even though Gamewood fighting for a top 9 spot still at LAN, they will be at regional finals, will Gamewood. They will have done enough. But now it's a big question as to can they still push themselves further when we get to those regional finals, whereas it's still to be answered about Horizon. Can they survive relegation?
Well, Alliance, very interesting to watch those. This is Fire Beavers who they're going up against, and there's a respawn coming in as well. V2 somehow still in this. V2 might cause problems here because the last player who was alive is behind Alliance, and now Fire Beavers see that information. They hear the fights coming in, and they want to have a piece of this. Yuki, though, with his spray, is holding back Fire Beavers almost single-handedly.
Also, excuse me, it was Heroes that are in relegation, not Horizon. They have pretty much the same name when I look over them. But it is going to be Horizon. They were in 15th. They will pretty much secure themselves in the regionals, so they'll be sitting pretty after winning that engagement. Still a very important fight that they had to win. Otherwise, it could have looked a little bit dire down towards that mid-table. But now, here come Alliance. They have been forcing those teams, as you say, and it looks like they're thinking about maybe pushing towards one here.
Yeah, I kind of like this move. They know there's a solo player alive. They knew there was one behind them, and they've made the decision not to fight against Fire Beavers, who had that advantageous position. They want to clear their backs, make sure this rat is taken care of, secure themselves the free KP, and if they do that, then they can move into the circle a little bit later. V2 finally eliminated, and Yuki should have a red Evo shield to play with as well. So a good decision here from Alliance. Play it safe. Don't force the fight with so many teams still alive. Get those placement points when they come. Nightmare Esports also eliminated in the time that it took Alliance to take that player out.
Remember, Alliance fighting for first place today as well. IG were above them, are above them, but I don't see IG on the map. They were eliminated, so Alliance with a fantastic chance to win this week, secure those 25 points, and put themselves in almost those guaranteed positions for those LAN placements. We've said that, you know, around 100 points pretty much has you there. We know Ascend already guaranteed, but there are a few teams who are closing in on 100 points. It won't be that much you need to get to LAN, but it certainly can make you comfortable going into those regional finals with that kind of points total.
Alliance and Vex holding down a very similar area at the moment as we jump on board with Na'Vi. Na'Vi who are gonna slide down to one of these fences to stay safe. Again, a great game from Na'Vi, excuse me, here. As Alliance still try and hold their backs. Castle Wall is going to go down, but also that's going to be to protect from Vex and the line of sight that might have scuppered them. Now they have some sort of micro-fortified position to play with, but you can see Yuki needs a little bit of help here. Has to pop that battery.
Has to pop the batteries. Alliance are able to reset, and they're dealing damage from a distance as well. Na'Vi go down in 8th. Have they done enough today to survive relegation would be my biggest question. Fire Beavers have lost one, so have Alliance is vexed. They're tearing through lobby right now.
Yeah, Vex are moving up onto the back of Alliance, and Effect got caught out now. So Vex took the opportunity to take the place of Alliance, who, after doing the damage, kind of got tunnel vision onto the fight that was going down. Unlucky takes some damage, though. Vex Gaming looking to push onto Alliance. Let's jump into a listening and see how this fight goes.
We have to play right, but this is a really hard rotation for us. Can we still walk from behind there or no? Can you go check right now?
I'm checking.
Wait, can we, guys? I think we have to focus this team away.
Can I shoot them?
I don't know. I'm looking where to the next zone.
We must go here. Enemy spot. Far.
Okay, they're running out. Look.
Yeah.
Nice guys.
Okay.
Here.
57 on him.
Here.
56.
Do we have any nades for the window?
No.
I think we should commit to the building soon.
We should now. Come left to me.
I'm batting right now.
Left and go.
Okay, 1 sec. I'm coming over then.
You wanna wipe them in below, okay?
Nice. I'm coming over. Yeah. Tangled. Good on me. 1 sec.
He's not raising. Just alive.
Popping up bar again. He's one standing, I think.
I'm with you.
Popping up bar. I'm with Tella holding you.
Yeah.
I got it off. Popping my kid out.
Again.
Yeah.
Behind no
Swing
down.
down. Yeah.
One more dog.
He's cracked. One more dog. He's one. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, one stops.
Yeah.
There's a guy to left. Come have any team pushing us below. Careful. Just play this side. We need to clear left side after it closes, okay? We can't have anyone playing there.
Healing right now, healing.
Let's stay where you are. Me and I'll let you clear alone.
Okay. 1 sec. I'm batting.
Good. Alright. We're being chilling, boys.
There's some gun here somewhere.
Chilling. I'm switching from.
Heavy. Can you give me some heavy?
Well, back into the game, and what a play that was, Stan. From Vex Gaming, forcing their way into circles. Sometimes it's about forcing their way into circles. Sometimes it's about playing smart. Sometimes it's about taking the opportunities in front of you.
Yeah, and they still have the opportunity to potentially even take this week if they were to get a victory plus a lot of kills, because we saw Invictus eliminated earlier. We've just seen Alliance go down. As it stands, IG still hold first position by 1 point over Alliance. So Alliance came awfully close to taking that away from them, but did not quite do enough. How much could that mean when we look at the grand scheme of things, and when we get to those land placements, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, the real spoilers of IG's party could be Vexed. There's still a lot to do, though. 4 teams remaining. They're all kind of posturing up against one another right now. 2 buildings to work with. Horizon are holding the kind of far bridge side, but have the Watson fences at least to keep them safe for now. But as they all close, it's going to be about who takes that first fight, who's going to take the most damage, and who can be the last into the fight is what's going to be very important here.
We're going to see a fight break out between Vex and LFO, and it's Vex to absolutely decimate them, and they had to make that play. Coexist, they're both going to die on the cross from the shots coming in from Horizon and Reply Totem, but it's Vex to make the play. I'm not sure if it was forced onto them, but they win the fight, and now they have a position to play from.
Totem technically have to move last in this circle. Horizon and Vex will both have to move first, whilst they're also being shot from both directions. This is not enjoyable for any team that's involved with it right now, and Legend composition could heavily come into it if anyone has any sort of abilities to give them some sort of coverage. At least Vex have found a little wall they can work with right now, whereas Horizon, they're just trying to make their own walls. They've got the fences up, of course, but you can still be shot through them.
Amar's trying to take some space as well for Reply Totem up on that high ground of the building. Q comes in from Matafe as well. There's going to be a missile swarm, and they're going to try and cut this team off as well, using that black hole. And now they're going to try and fight onto Horizon underneath this bridge. They're going to try and play the side of it here. Vex Gaming trying to get across, and it looks like it's worked, because you can see that Totem have done the damage for them onto Horizon. Vex now just have to exist, have to survive, and maybe this might be their game to take.
Will Horizon spoil this for Vex, though, a little bit? Totem trying to sit pretty, but they're going to have to drop very soon, and they're going to be very vulnerable to a lot of the damage that now can output from both squads. But Totem are still getting knocks, but now here comes the damage from Vex.
Vex do the damage, Horizon get eliminated, and now you're going to see the swarm, the ape come in from Vex Gaming, who play the end game perfectly. They did such a good job of focus firing the team as they left the building, getting that knock, gave them the game, and Vexed, forcing their way into zone, might have forced themselves way up those leaderboards as well, Dan.
Yeah, pushed themselves into the top 3 for sure. I don't think would have done enough to fight against IG and Alliance, who, as I said, were separated by just 1 point in the end, but it's what Vex needed. They needed to just push themselves into that top 3, get as much points to guarantee you, get you closer, of course, to those playoff spots, and then think about LAN as well.
Well, all the teams in this lobby, fellas, great call, by the way. I mean, it really was LAN on the mind, and it was regional finals too, but, you know, by the proxy of being able to get to LAN after playing in that, Vex actually was the closest team. Starting out the day, they had 86 points, I think. They were just behind Aurora, who are in the 90s, and they were, of course, behind Ascend, who is far ahead in EMEA and also qualified for LAN in terms of no one can really catch them and push them out of the top 9. You know, Vex had a chance. I don't know if this is enough, but if they were to get something like second, I think they would have joined Ascend. I don't know if third is enough for them. It might just be narrowly outside of the margins, but what we do know is that Vex are a threat. They are clearly here to play. They have figured out whatever issues they had. Matafi's journey of finding the right teammates and IGLing into a situation where he feels confident. It feels like, Mark, they've solved all those issues. And heading into the regional final, this spells bad news for, I think, a lot of teams who maybe weren't counting on Vex to be such a threat at the start of the season, now realizing, wow, this is, if not the biggest threat, one of the main threats we have to take into consideration.
I would agree. I think Vex are one of the most dangerous teams in EMEA for a number of different reasons. They're obviously an extremely good fighting team. They're dangerous for a number of reasons. They can win games, they can dominate games, but also they can kind of ruin your game sometimes with plays you don't expect to see from a team. They'll run at you if they think they've got an opportunity to kill you. And sometimes that'll work for Vex, sometimes it'll work against them. But I think those little mistakes and those percentages have started to weigh more heavily in their favor as they've started to work out a few things and how these lobbies are playing and how teams are going to try and deal with them when they come at them through the weeks that we've seen in the Pro League, right? And when a roster comes together, it always is going to take time for those mistakes to be corrected. And I'm seeing more consistency and more smart plays out of Vex than we certainly were at the start of the split. The firepower certainly still is there, and it's turning into wins for them more consistently now.
I think they have a strong Storm Point. I don't know if you would disagree or agree, Gaskin, but this is the second time I've seen them win Game 6 on Storm Point, and clearly they've had a strong tournament overall. But in terms of maps and in terms of being able to pick up the pace, Vex seem to be a crescendo team in terms of a team that starts strong and falls flat.
Vex certainly have a stronger win rate when it comes to Storm Point than World's Edge. They had a 33% win rate coming into today's competition, whereas over on World's Edge it was only at 25. Still, fantastic win rates when you look at how many teams actually will find victories throughout a season. It does seem like Storm Point maybe caters to their style of play a little bit more. It can be more open, you can find more teams, you can find a couple more kills with your aggressive nature, but ultimately you still have to play successfully in that final circle. It's not just about aggression. There is so much strategy when it comes to those final circles, and the way Vex managed and manipulated that final circle was perfect. They knew Horizon were a really big threat, but they thought if they could get to one side of the wall, Horizon very much then are in the firing lines of Totem, and it meant that Horizon just got absolutely blasted down, and then Vex took their time, they were patient, and then they eventually popped up, got the kills.
Two great decisions there. They also took down Alliance before that and found out on a little bit of a choke that they could pressure them, and Fire Beavers did the rest of the job, and ultimately Vex had to win inside the building as well. So there was a ton of moments that Vex, things could have gone one way, they went the other way, and they mentioned that, Natafe speaking to us earlier, that this is the way they like to play. We are an aggressive team. We would rather get 3 KP than sit inside and get a top 10, because that's really only one placement point if we haven't fought anybody, Mark. And I feel like we're seeing more teams shift to that focus in terms of EMEA and North America, that being aggressive, being a team fight edge roading team is actually more in our benefit than trying to make top 10.
Yeah, I think if the opportunity for kills presents itself, if you get initial damage, then you have to try and play off of it, right? It's just about timing when that fight happens. If it's early game, great. Towards the end game, that element of risk starts to get higher with the amount of teams in the vicinity. But as we take a look at the leaderboards here, you can see 22 points. They said they didn't want to, think about placements. They'd rather get the kills. Well, you get both.
Why not both?
Get both. Just do both.
That seems like an easy strategy. I mean, I think Vex are maybe opening people's minds up. You don't have to choose one, okay? Just get both of them, and you'll be happier that way alongside. Not a Svenseira team I've been impressed with today, very much so. I think they needed to perform. They did perform. They were excellent, I think, for showing up in terms of having an improvement moment needed. And then LFO Forever, I think, were a pretty solid team. Of all the teams we highlighted in the middle of the pack heading into today that needed to perform, Nightmare, V2, Game Ward, E6, LFO Forever was only 4 points behind them. We didn't talk about them at all. They performed, I think, better than the teams that we did talk about. So LFO Forever, really a nice performance today. On the back half, though, these, Dan, obviously going to be some of the disappointments of EMEA in terms of how they hope their tournament would go.
Yeah, we got confirmation of some teams that will be in relegation. Of course, we'll clear all that up by the end of the show, but we know for well we're not going to see Scars. They're going to be in the elimination. Echo are going to be in elimination as well. Potentially SAF could drop as far. They probably maybe could drop out of regionals, but relegation is still on the cards there as well. Corpa, another team that was fighting against relegation. All these teams that weren't really able to necessarily get going today, and we were hoping that maybe just one of these teams in relegation would show up, would kind of change their tide, change their fortune, but it doesn't really seem like that's going to be the case today. I think the only team in the relegation zone was Na'Vi, who are going to force themselves out of it, and they were right on the borderline of it.
They jump above Reply Totem, which was massive. Obviously, Reply Totem ahead of them, Startified ahead of them. Startified pretty good tournament as well. 44 points. That's not a bad day. They will stay above Element 6, but Element 6, who's well above them, will not lose too many points in terms of placement there. Aurora, just with 9th. I think that's 11 points. They're at 94. They still are over 100 here, and I think should be our #1 performing team, but we will have to wait and see. I want to see the regular standings because we are going to it in terms of who will make the cut. Look at this. 52 was the cutoff mark, but not as sincere. They made it.
Yeah, they stay alive, and that's great for them. I mentioned what a story they've had and what difficulty and challenges they're playing against right now. So for Na'Vi to come out today and put in the performance that they needed to, it means they will be at the regional finals, which is so important for them. And a huge congratulations to them for performing today and doing what they had to do. But I'm looking at the other end of the table, by the way. Ascend 106, Aurora 105, Vex 104. Woo! I mean, that sets us up pretty nicely.
And you know what? It also a team that you might have missed and passed over there, VZN. They started out after having, I think, day 8, and then in the last meeting between these two teams, taking something between 4th and 1st. They ended up getting 19th today. I mean, that really didn't put them in a position to hold on to that land spot right now. They're only 1 point ahead of, and so VZN obviously a bit of a dud this afternoon, but take a look at this. I think for a lot of people, breath of fresh air. Gaming Gladiators, Hardeki, one of the bigger names, although going through a lot of emotional changes and adjustments. He's mentioned on Twitter, sending all our best to him. Will have a spot in the Pro League next split, which is a big deal to be able to kind of rebound and bounce back. But Scars, Heroes, Corpa, 3 Muppets, Vidfix Gaming, Phoenix Legacy, and Turkish Stars and Echo Esports will be relegated. It's unfortunate, but it happens in competition. That is just the way things tend to go. Of course, every single day we have our opportunities to talk about teams that should perform, that might not perform, that if they don't, there could be some trouble. But always at the end of it, we get to see who got the job done. And so today, let's highlight some of our teams, our Monster MVP team performances here on the day. Mark, I want to give the floor to you first. There were several teams that stood out, and they're at the top of the standings in many ways. But to you, who got your Monster MVP today?
I'm going to go with Yuki, and I think a lot of it kind of folds nicely into what we were talking about at the start of the day, right? We were talking about the WD back, what's in your pack, and we were talking about the charge rifle. This guy had it on him the whole game, but there's more to just standing still and hitting shots. Like the way that he was creating space for Alliance to play off was really solid, and the angles that he took to support his two teammates, he was always there to do damage. Not only getting KP today, but I feel like as an anchor player, Yuki played so well today, so consistently, and he was able to influence so much space for Alliance to take advantage of, and they didn't need to be asked twice, especially on some of their tough rotations that they had to make as well. Yuki's damage coming in from that Charlie rifle was certainly something to be impressed with.
It's not fair that he gets to be great looking as well in real life. I mean, it's just not.
It's really
cool.
not, honestly. I'm actually going to take it. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to give it to someone else just because he's got enough going on. No, it's not fair.
Yuki, obviously a great selection. Dan, you know, Alliance, they were unstoppable. I mean, I can't even mention how much that I was impressed with their play and their addition to effect. It seems like they're only getting better and better, and Hockey's himself had said so. But for you, who did you have your eye on? Who was your Monster MVP for this afternoon?
I've been talking about Invictus all day, and for good reason, with how they performed, but a lot of that comes down to not just the IGL, but we've seen Graceful added as the co-IGL to this roster, and we were wondering how he was going to perform when he was added. Not only is he doing, you know, incredible things to help them position themselves by co-IGLing, we'll give a lot of that to Noises, but Graceful actually, the kills he's putting down, the damage he's outputting right now he maybe gets to stop a little bit of that brain power going towards IGLing. He can focus on his in-game performance, and it really is showing. He has been incredible with some of the fights that I've been seeing taken, winning very important 1v1s, but also taking the right angles to assist his team. When you are playing a Watson, there's a lot of responsibility to put yourselves in the right areas, to protect your teammates in certain places, and Graceful seems to have a little bit of everything.
Doing it with grace, you might need to add. I think these two teams and two players you highlighted were phenomenal. But fellas, I'm going to add one more. I got to give a shout out to the person who answered the call. Graceful said, we need this person to step out of their shell. They've got a land win. I don't. They should be fragging out with me. We looked at halftime. JMW was leading the top kill leaderboards on the day. I think that is a huge sign that when tasked to rise to the challenge, he did so. That's a great sign for IG as well, and why they were so successful on the day. For a great day in EMEA, our last day here before you do a regional finals, those have been your Monster MVPs. Whew. Very exciting stuff. And we've talked a lot about this player and this team in particular. How could you not? They won 3 games in EMEA. 3, almost tying the entirety of the splits overall record with 4, and that was Ascend, and they tied Optic. So no team has gone beyond that. But if you compare performances, they were this close. And of course, it has to do with how well they all performed as a team, and we want to talk to them. In fact, talk to maybe not the IGL, but the co-IGL. We'll get it from him in his own words, what his role is. We've talked to him before. Graceful, it is great to see you, man. Congratulations on a great start to heading into really the knockout stages of Apex here, regional land coming up.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it feels great to come off of a win, even though we had some inconsistencies. Overall, we played out of our minds, and like you both said as well, I appreciate the kind words always. Jake really stepped up today, and it showed like it makes everything so easy when you just have like a Terminator walking up and just insta killing 2 people, and it's just like it makes everything easy.
Graceful, you challenged Jake. Is that the role you want to play on this team? You have experience. You have been there. You have IGL, but you've taken a step back and allowed noises to do that for you. Are these type of interpersonal things to keep your team connected something that you feel you can contribute to IG and is part of the reason Jake's stepping up and you're seeing this success?
I would say, yeah, I have a lot of experience in multiple roles. I've always been the one to flex no matter what the team needs, whether that's a fragger, anchor, or IGL. I play everything. And I think since, like, with a little bit of humbleness to it, I think I'm the most flexible player across the world, I would probably say. And I think it's more important to bring out the absolute best in my teammates. Like, I think I'm an enabler. I don't think I'm the best at everything, but I think I bring out the best in people. So to use me to help you become the world best, like I think Jake and Cam both are world best player material, and I think I just help enable them. I don't consider myself at the top, but I think I make it easier for people to get there. Like I lead them the way, kind of. Like I guide them to a treasure I can't have type of deal.
You're a coach, basically.
I'm old, you know. I'm old compared to all the young guns. I'm just leading them there.
I think it's a bit harsh on yourself there. I think you played phenomenally yourself individually today, and I think you should take some credit for that as well. But I want to talk about the importance of today's performance for you, because obviously you have the regional finals coming up next, and coming into today, yeah, you guys are in a great position, but it's also very easy to kind of look down instead of up when you're looking at, you know, qualification spots and land spots and all of that sort of stuff. So how important was, you know, game 1, game 2, just to get a win on the board, just to settle those nerves a little bit?
Yeah, no, for us, we're definitely a team that thrives when we all feel good. And we have this issue where, as you can probably see, we died on Valcolt several times, on rotation, essentially, on our macro several times. But when we get just one game where we get to shoot our guns, it just carries the entire tournament, essentially. Like, Jake gets to kill 2 people and he feels super good. Like, I just, like, I get to help him and I feel good. And Cam feels like his calls help out the entire thing, like it works, right? And then we just snowball based off that. So the first 2 wins were huge, like huge in terms of performance overall.
And Graceful, let's talk World's Edge versus Stormpoint. Your consistency on World's Edge, you're actually the best team that we've seen across the entire split on World's Edge with 6 victories. Not the same on Stormpoint though. What's the major difference for you guys on these maps?
So the biggest thing is that this is the thing. A lot of times you have to kind of adapt, right? And it's based off of lobbies and like which teams are in your lobby and how do they play rather than how do you play. Our rotation and our macro are 99% of the same. It just comes down to who's blocking us on our way and who is like maybe playing odd. Because typically what you're used to is in the other group, we have teams that play kind of slow. So we don't meet them on rotation a lot, and we can pretty much just run straight into the end game. We can say that, right? Whereas like in this specifically, we have 4 hard zone rotators with us. So what ends up happening is if we get slowed down, we can't get past them unless it's a blind Valkyrie, which is RNG. And then we get caught in the try to get in. It's kind of like we're in a spot where it's just really tough to decide, because it also opens for 3P when you have hyper aggressive teams like, you know, Firebeaver and Aurora. Shout out to them for never losing their identity, by the way. I love that they just play their game. Like, they must be the teams that have the most fun in the entire world. and so you know, all these teams, you try to mix and mesh. It becomes like a spider web, and you just have to try to find your little pathing, essentially. And sometimes it's harder, and sometimes it's easier, and that's why.
Incredible. You can tell the strength of the spider web, but also the flexibility of it. And I feel like that's a good sign of a good metaphor for how you all are playing, given the situations and the groups and your results. Graceful, I want to give you one last moment just to say anything to your fans, friends, anyone at home. Final words for us before we let you go.
Thank you, everyone, for supporting us. I see all the kind words, all the hype and everything. I feel like people are respecting Jake and Cam like they need to be respected. I really appreciate that. Shout out to my family and my wife and my cute dog, Gaia. And also to you guys for always hyping us up. I really appreciate that. I feel like you guys are so good, talented at bringing view to people that kind of deserve it. Where it's like, it's hard. It's very easy to always, look at the top, but you guys always try to look everywhere. Like, oh, this team, have to perform. So we will look at them rather than just, oh, who's going to win, And it's really nice to have that. And I appreciate that. And thank you for having me.
Oh,
wow.
As an Englishman, I find it very difficult to accept a compliment, but thank you very much, my friend. It's very kind of you.
Yes, very kind. Graceful, thank you so much. I'm glad. This is my, I think, second interview with you in a matter of 8 days. So it's been great chatting with you, buddy, and hope you have a great time at the regional final. Congratulations on your win, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah. Graceful, IG International, a dominant day for them, fellas. And I'll start with you, Dan, kind of closing thoughts and just getting to, what that means today. What does it mean heading into the regional final now that we've got EMEA set up and ready to go?
I would hate to try and call it and try and predict who is going to win that regional final, even though we've seen amazing consistency from IG, from Ascend, from Vexed. They might not be the team that wins the regional final. We might see a team who needs it, remember, because 9 teams are guaranteed via points, but 1 team who wins it via match point can make it to LAN. Are we going to see a big surprise? You do not want to miss it on Sunday. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait.
Thank you so much, Dan. I mean, you've been killing it on the broadcast. My friend Mark, award-nominated play-by-play for a reason. I got to get that in there one more time. We got another show coming up with you today, but I want to get your final thoughts on how EMEA has gone for you.
I'm going to get you back for this. Don't worry. We've got a whole another show for me to get you back. But yeah, I mean, it's been a great performance from a lot of teams today. And I think the thing I always liked seeing as well was, the Na'Vi performance throughout the day, the adversity they've gone through to make it to regional finals. And like Dan said, it's not done till it's done with the match point format to make it to LAN or force your way into that top 9. So I think if you wondering what you want to do on Sunday, clear the diary, because the regional final is going to be absolutely amazing. And the fact that we've got another Apex LAN coming up, the teams are going to be there, the teams are going to be competing, and we're going to find out who those teams are. I think it's going to be one of the hyper broadcasts that we've had all year. So Sunday is a special day. Make sure you're there.
It's going to be even more special because we're going to have everyone back in the building, but we will have told, I think, better stories. We'll have had more interviews. We'll have had more time in the real world where we are all separated for like 2.5 years, not being able to really interact with each other to really flesh out the amazing things that these players have done. So cannot wait to be with you guys on Sunday for EMEA, but we still have more coming up. That'll be the end of Mark and Dan, though. Everyone in the chat, show them some love. And everyone who is here watching, we appreciate you. You have been amazing and phenomenal. Let us know your thoughts, whether it's the MVP, whether it's somebody you think should have gotten an honorable mention, who you're excited to see in the regional final. And do you think who is going to take it? You'd probably be, wiser than us to not say anything. I'm not going to say anything. But if you do have a fan favorite, go ahead and spam it in the chat. Let us know what you're feeling. But if you feel sad because you think it's over, it's not. We've got more Apex Legends coming up very, very soon. And check out this QR code, by the way. I'll throw that up in just a little bit afterwards so you can give us some feedback. But coming up in North America in just a few hours, we have a beautiful showcase of our final day of NA. The teams that have to fight for that final spot, who might be facing relegation. It all goes down. The biggest names in North America taking on the exact same level of intensity and action. Myself, Mark, and Dan a little bit later in this afternoon. So do not go anywhere. As I mentioned, the QR code that's going to show up right here, I think it's going to be above my screen if you check this out, a way to give us some feedback. That's right. If you have any opportunities to say, hey, Rain, I love your jacket, or, don't wear green, wear red or something. No, just joking. Anything you want us to improve in terms of the show, whether it's a way we can make your experience better on the ALGS. This is a community-focused broadcast. We want you to have a great time, and so we appreciate your feedback. So let us know. Open up your phones. Use that QR code, and answer the survey. What a great job. Thank you so much, production. Everyone, all the players, all the viewers, all of the team behind the scenes, and of course, all of you who have been watching. My name's been Randy. I've been joined by Onset and Gaskin here in our EMEA final day. Cannot wait to see you in North America. Never give up. Never stop gaming. We'll see you in just a few hours.